this point, I'm pretty sure you've probably seen one of these videos where somebody gives you a tour of a ridiculously expensive mansion. All the tours are pretty much the same. It doesn't matter if they're touring a celebrity mansion or a penthouse in London or a mid-century loft in Manhattan. They have one thing in common, and it's the fact that there's so much pointless luxury to them. You just can't peel your eyes away from it. You have to see the whole video, every nook and cranny. And and the price tag that goes along with these houses is also breathtaking. So much so, it often ends up being featured in the title of the video because it's just so attention grabbing. Now, the difference between you and me is at one point in my life, I started doing so well, I decided to splurge a little, to live a little, and ended up renting not one, but 3 such houses to live in. And it was the worst decision of my life. Let me tell you, it was really a horror show. And I want to give you every single detail of everything that happened to me in each one of these houses over the past 4 years. But also, more importantly, I want to teach you the lessons that I learned. Because even if you're not in a position where you feel like you could rent a place like this to live in, what I learned is a universal lesson that works for anyone at any point. It's a lesson in how to avoid getting scammed out of your life savings. And also a lesson in how not to make a fool out of yourself. Now, this video is pretty long. Let's get real. This is a long video. We're in for a little while, but don't feel intimidated by how long the video is. I broke it down into a very easily digestible numbered list so you can follow along without losing the plot. So get comfortable, get something to drink, and join me in this adventure of how I basically ruined my life renting luxury dream homes. Now, to give you just a smidge, just a taste of what I'm going to talk about in this video, everything that you could possibly imagine that could go wrong in a house like this happened to me. I'm talking about pests, black mold, insane negligence in the part of the owners of the house, floods, leaks, robberies, scams, even Satanism and attempted murder. It all happened to me. It's not an exaggeration. It is not for show. It's real. It happened. And I'm gonna tell you every painstaking detail of what went wrong in these houses. So buckle up, Buttercup, because this is gonna be a wild ride. The truth. Actually, the problem is better. The problem with luxury dream homes. Yeah, because see, when you see these tours, you're usually in a fantasizing mindset. Like you see yourself, you visualize yourself walking around this house, sleeping in the bed, lounging on the couch, brushing your teeth on that marble sink, frying an egg in the kitchen.
You drink it, you look at this beautiful view, take a deep breath, you meditate, you relax.
Obviously, there is a level of materialism involved. There's a level of love of luxury, sure. But I believe for most people, there is a deeper level than that. I think deep down, what people fantasize about is not so much the elegance, but the idea of having a life that is smoother, You see these videos and you think if only you could afford to live in a mansion like this, your life would also be breathtaking, beautiful, and elegant. Your problems, the ones that you're facing right now, would probably dissolve the minute that you move in. If you have problems, they will probably be handled by someone else. And then you could live a life that is more comfortable, easier, and also more exciting, more adventurous, more interesting, because now you're a part of a world of affluence. I don't want to be the person who tells you Santa isn't real. But unfortunately, that's exactly what I'm here for. I am here to burst your bubble and tell you exactly what it is like to live in a place like this. Because even the realtors giving you the tour of these houses don't have experience living in them. When they finish giving you the tour of the house, they go back to their one bedroom that they share with two roommates in the periphery of the city that they're in. They have no clue what it is like to live in a place like this, and I'm here to tell you all about it. In fact, if I could turn back time and go visit myself for years in the past, I would probably advise me against ever setting a foot in a house like this. Now, here's the first thing, and if you're only going to take away one thing from this video, let it be this one. If somebody is renting out their dream home to a tenant, they are broke, in the red, insolvent, moths in their pockets. They have no means to sustain themselves or to pay for their expenses, and they are using their property as a cash cow for that purpose. Now, you may be thinking, this makes no sense, because if they're broke, how did they afford to buy the $10 million mansion in the first place? And I would have to agree with you. It is very contradictory, it is an oxymoron, but it is absolutely true, and I am going to explain to you exactly why this happens. The rags to riches to rags pipeline. What do I mean by this? Well, it's very simple. If you're like me, right, you have been fantasizing about these mansions for a while, and you're not wealthy yourself. I am not wealthy. I don't come from wealth. I was born into a middle-class family. I was raised as a part of the middle class with a middle-class mentality, and I only found wealth later in my life. I started doing incredibly well. That's stuff for another video. And at first, at the beginning, because I have a middle-class mentality, I was very thrifty. I wanted to save for a rainy day, plan for every contingency. But after a while, it was now time to live a little. It was time to splurge a little. And that is when it occurred to me that I could maybe try moving into a mansion like this. Now, because I don't have wealthy parents, nobody taught me the lessons that go with wealth, meaning that I had the money, but I didn't have the know-how or the wisdom to manage it and to move within an affluent context. And here's the difference. The person renting out this house is someone who had, say, $10 million to buy a mansion. Not only did they buy the mansion, but they spent a couple more million renovating it so that every nook and cranny of the house was finished to perfection. And then a couple more million to boot for the furnishings and the artwork. And once they had everything exactly the way they wanted, they went ahead and rented it out to a tenant. You see how this doesn't make much sense? It doesn't seem like someone would spend this amount of money on a dream house with the intention to rent it out temporarily to different random strangers. Tenants are not necessarily famous for taking good care of the property, and usually landlords will be smart enough to know that they should probably use durable and not very expensive furniture in the houses that they're leasing, because you could get a crazy wild tenant who throws crazy parties, slashes your leather furniture, takes a hammer and nails art to your very expensive Florence-styled kitchen, knocks down walls when you're not looking, etc., right? You could get a tenant like this. Whatever the tenant does to the house, it could be much more expensive than whatever the tenant actually gave you throughout the year. What kind of situation could the landlord be in that they would rather rent out their dream house than simply sit on it? Now, if you had $20 million to buy and renovate and furnish a mansion, and you're still wealthy, you don't have the need to rent it out to anyone. You can afford to just pay for whatever maintenance cost the mansion has and continue to live your life. If you're renting it out, there is a very big chance that you're doing so out of necessity. that you're doing it out of desperation. These houses tend to pay an exorbitant amount of property tax every year. They also have maintenance costs, and if they're in a gated community, they will also have community expenses to pay. If you don't have an income anymore, or if you're broke, this becomes a very heavy burden. Now, generally speaking, these people will start out trying to sell the mansion first, right? They want to just get all the money they put in back in liquid form because they need it, because they have no income anymore. The problem is these houses are worth millions of dollars. Not every day a random stranger walks by with $20 million burning a hole in their pocket, ready to give it to you for the mansion that you tailored to your own tastes. And meanwhile, while you wait for this deep-pocketed stranger to show up, you still have to pay for all of these expenses. They rake up, you start raking up debt. And that's when the light bulb moment happens, and you think, oh, gee, maybe I can find a tenant to rent the place more easily than I can find someone to buy it. And while the tenant is renting it, I get some cash that I desperately need to pay for this house expenses, but also to bankroll my own. Now, I'm telling you this not because I am imagining it. This is not an exercise in imagination. I actually rented 3 places, but in order to rent those 3 places, I actually went to see at least 50, and I talked to at least 30 different owners, and I could see the pattern so clearly. The type of person, generally speaking, who would rent out a dream house to a tenant is something like this. It's usually the ex-wife of somebody who's wealthy. She managed to get the property in the divorce, but she doesn't have the income to support herself or the maintenance of the house.
I don't have any money left for the lifestyle that I've been accustomed to, and getting my nails done and my hair and massages and things like that.
Another type of person who would rent out a place like this is the adult children of a wealthy family. You see, families like this often tie up their patrimony into property because it is much more difficult to spend and to squander. They make sure that it lasts for another generation. So they have no problem putting property in the names of their children. However, they do have expectations from their children. They want to see them earn an income. Oftentimes they don't.
Brownstones, water towers, trees, skyscrapers, fighters, and what?
They're not used to working. They don't want to work. And they want to continue to fund their lifestyle. So they eat through their trust funds. And when they're done with the trust fund, they still have the property. And the only thing they can think of is, well, if my family is not going to pay for my expenses anymore because I'm 40 and I have never held a job for more than a week in my life, maybe I can take this beautiful house my daddy gave me and rent it out so somebody else bankrolls my life of crazy abandon. Another type of person who rents out a place like this is a former politician. Former politicians often will have a bunch of high-end properties like this, and you may be wondering, gee, how does a politician afford a dream house with a price tag such as this with the salary that they get? They don't seem to match. I wonder what is going on there. I'm gonna leave it to your imagination, but I'm just gonna say eventually politicians go out of office. And they do tend to keep the keepsakes from the time that they were in power, including a few properties such as this. So they will rent it out in order to continue to live from doing nothing at all. So this is the type of person that will rent out a place like this. And what they have in common is they have no skill. They are not very responsible people. They don't know how to manage property. And they are seeing their property as a cash cow. So they're not going to put anything you give them back into the house. They're not planning to invest in the house. They're trying to take whatever they can from it until they can sell it, if they can sell it. So you move into a house like this with all your naivete, and you enter your house as this optimistic person, and you don't realize that you're entering this pipeline, the rags to riches to rags pipeline, when you put a foot into one of these mansions. Why? Well, very simple, because you go in there with all of your dreams and hopes, your expectations that you're gonna have a smooth life, free from problems, and what you see when you get into these properties is nobody has given maintenance to these properties in years. They may look the part. When you got the tour of the house, everything seemed to be in order, but you're not an electrician, and you're not a plumber, and you know nothing about foundations of buildings, and you're just a random regular person, and everything seemed nice, but once you're moved in, you start seeing all the hidden flaws and vices of the house you just rented. You didn't see them before, but now you see them. They have neglected this house so terribly that now everywhere you look, there's a problem with the house. Problems so difficult to solve and that make your life a living hell. And you may be thinking, well, if that's the case, why don't you just up and leave, right? Why don't you just leave? Well, very simple, because these houses will often require you to give them 6 months, 5 months security deposit in advance. And when you're living in a cheap apartment, 4 or 5 months is definitely doable and not something that's going to hold you back from moving out, right? When you're renting a house that's as expensive as these houses are, 5 months rent is the equivalent to a bank loan. Basically, you're giving the person whose house you're moving in a bank loan. And so you're trapped. If you leave, you're breaking the lease. They get to keep 5, 6, 7 months, whatever they ask you for, deposit in advance. They're not going to give it back to you. So you're in between a rock and a hard place. You have to suck it up and live in a house that's falling apart, or you can break the lease and then assume that you have lost whatever it is you put in. If you let them, not only will they get your security deposit, your payments every month, some of them will even try to scam you while you're living in their houses. They will take it further. They're going to try and milk you for whatever you're worth. And if you're not smart and you don't cut the situation as soon as you realize what is going on, like I did, then you're just not going to be wealthy anymore. Basically, they're going to fund their life. They're going to pay for their debt. They're going to, pay for the maintenance of the house and everything else with your money. It is you who's going to pay for the bill. And by the end of it, you're going to realize that you have spent so much more than you were expecting to for such a low quality experience. And eventually, if you let them, you'll finish on the other side of the pipeline. You'll end back to rags. And here's the problem. It's not that by going through the pipeline and you end up back to rags doesn't mean that the owner of the mansion is going to go back to riches. Far from it. They're also going to be in rags, and they're just going to find the next willing victim to milk for all they're worth. Because these mansions are a black pit that swallows money, and it's insatiable, and you might as well just take all of your money, put it into a pit, and light fire on it, because that's essentially what these mansions are. This is why it is a terrible idea to rent them, but it's even more of a terrible idea to buy them, because if you buy a mansion like this, and you will have to pay foot the bill, and it's, believe me, it's the expenses of keeping a house like this in working order are insane. So that's why it is a terrible idea. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the security deposit, because this is what I call the security deposit swindle. Now the second lesson here is these people who are desperate for money could go to a bank and ask for a loan, right? And the bank could give them the loan or reject them. But even if they got the loan from the bank, the bank is going to make them go through a billion hoops in order to get the money. They're going to have to leave their property as warranty. In case they don't pay, the bank gets to keep their property. And if they do pay, the interests they're going to pay are crazy. So all in all, it's not the best deal. However, you can get a tenant to lease your apartment and basically get the same amount of money from the tenant. And then you can trap the tenant in the house, and you would get essentially the same loan the bank would give you with no interest. And if you're crafty enough, you don't even have to pay it back. If you don't pay, there's very little consequences that you're going to face for not paying it. The tenant is surely not going to get your mansion in the process. So it's much safer. It makes much more sense to swindle someone with a security deposit than it does to ask a bank for a loan. How does it work, or how did it happen to me? Well, in most countries, there is a law governing the relationships between a tenant and a landlord. The duration of the mandatory period and the lease agreement is usually established in the law. It is usually 1 year. Usually there's a maximum amount of months that you can ask in advance for deposit. Sometimes it's 2 months, sometimes it's 3 months. In some cities it's half a month. But there's usually it's stipulated, like you can't color outside the lines. The problem is with hyper luxurious homes, when they exceed a certain amount of money monthly, or when they're bigger than a certain size, they're considered hyper luxurious homes. And in most countries, that means they don't have to abide by the regular law. They can add any sort of provisions that they want to the agreement, and this is what they take advantage of. I have gotten owners ask for even a full year in advance. Imagine paying 12 months in advance over a monthly payment of, say, $15,000. So imagine you're paying $15,000 a month and the owner asks for a full year in advance, a security deposit. And he can justify it just fine. He can say, well, I have all of this furniture, I have all this artwork, the house has such an expensive finishes. And in the moment when you're dealing with the owner, you may think that the owner is right, that he has a point. The problem is that's not why they're asking you for the money. In many cases, what they want is to actually get the money and not give it back by the end of the agreement. And I'm going to explain exactly how it works with the example of what happened to me. So on the first hyper luxurious mansion that I rented, a lot of things happened, a lot of wrong things happened there. And I think actually let's talk about that house in detail, and that way I can tell you about the swindle with the deposit and everything else that happened. So let's go with the first dream home. 4-story mansion in Europe. Oh, with a pool, hold on. This is important. In Europe. Okay, the first dream home, a 4-story mansion with a pool in Europe. This is the first time that I decided to actually rent a house of this quality. And here's what happened. I had been living in a very comfortable apartment. It was a very big apartment. It was very nice. It had balconies to the street. It wasn't by any means pointlessly opulent, right? It was within reason. It was expensive, but it was okay. And I spent 4 years of my life living in this apartment, had great relationship with the landlord and the neighbors. It was basically a really good place. Like I said, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't have left that apartment. But for some reason, I thought I could do better. And one contributing factor was the fact that we were just coming out of the pandemic. So we had been locked down in our apartments for 3 consecutive months, and it really hit me hard. not seeing the sunlight, not being able to breathe fresh air. And even though I did have balconies, the street that it was in was so narrow that I could only see a little patch of sky like this big when I looked up. So all in all, I had a really difficult time. I was terrified that we were gonna get locked in again if there was a spike in the winter, and I didn't want to spend it in an apartment. I also thought that the travel restrictions were not going to be lifted by the summer, and this is a city that gets incredibly hot in the summer. I'm talking scorching hot. I'm talking boil an egg on the sidewalk. So I wanted to be able to have a backyard and a pool so that I could spend my summer in my house without feeling miserable. So that was the mindset that I was in. I wanted a house. I wanted the house to have a backyard, and I wanted the house to have a pool so that I could spend the summer in comfort, even though we couldn't travel. What is the problem is I couldn't move to the suburbs because I don't drive. So my main concern was that I needed to have this house in the center of the city. Now, in the suburbs, there are many different options for houses like this that are not insanely expensive or insanely luxurious. But in Europe, the cities are very small, very crammed. Apartments tend to be tiny. Finding a spacious place is already a challenge. Now imagine finding a whole detached home with a pool in the center of one of the major cities in Europe. It's almost nearly impossible. And if you do find it, it comes attached with a price tag, with a price tag that is good enough for a YouTube title. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so after doing some research, I finally found a house with these characteristics. There were 2 houses in the center of the city, both with a backyard, and one of them had a pool. I went to tour both houses and settled for the house with the pool because it had a pool. Now, here's what happened with the house. I should probably have seen these as red flags, but I didn't because I was naive and I had my big hopes and my big dreams. And I was the first person complicit with this whole scammy situation because I wanted to believe it so badly. So the first red flag was I found this place on a website, kind of like Zillow, right? And the realtor didn't have an office. He didn't even have a website. All he had was a phone number, and I already thought that was fishy, and perhaps I should have listened to my gut instead of going with blind faith and optimism. But I didn't. I actually called the guy and I settled a date for a house tour. When I showed up to the house, the guy was waiting for me there, and the landlord opened the gate to the house. She was the one who was going to give me the tour, not the realtor. The realtor just stood back on the sidelines, just, as a witness to the whole situation. And it was the owner, the one taking me through all of the rooms and explaining everything to me. At the moment, I didn't know this was a maneuver. But in hindsight, I realized that because everything was broken or in disrepair, she couldn't let the guy give me the tour of the house because he was going to make a mistake somewhere along the line. Turn on a light that is not working, try to put up a blind that doesn't go up, etc. I didn't know this. I was naive. So I went along with the landlord for the tour of the house, and to me everything looked perfect. The house was beautiful. Even though the building, the house itself, was old, it was from the 1950s, and this gave it some very cool architectural features. The interior of the home looked like it had been renovated much more recently. It was completely furnished, and it was beautiful. I really liked it. I loved the mood of the house, I suppose. I didn't notice anything weird. I wasn't really very nitpicky either. And I'm not a plumber, I'm not an electrician, I am not an engineer to check the foundations of the house, right? I am just a regular person. To my naked eye, everything looked fine. The pool had a lid on, a very big lid on top of the pool. And she told me that this lid was necessary because the water treatment is very expensive, and if you don't put the lid on, the water is gonna rot. She told me this was a very special pool. It had a special filtration system because it was salt water. The pool had these incredible black tiles that she brought from the Kilimanjaro. And in fact, I could swim laps in this pool, even though it was quite small, because the pool had a system where there was a very strong jet stream aimed at the center of the pool. And if I swam against this jet stream, I could swim in place because the stream would go against me and I would swim in place and I could actually do laps in the pool. This to me was very exciting. Now, because I went and got the tour in October, it was quite chilly already. So that's why the lid was on. How I wish I would have lifted the lid to see what was under the lid before signing the lease. Unfortunately, I didn't, and I would pay a heavy price for overlooking this. The reason that I really like this house was all the extra features that it had. So just to give you an idea and a sense of the place, this house had 4 stories. I really love the basement. The basement is where the kitchen was. Now you may be thinking, a kitchen in the basement, this sounds a terrible idea. It would be so dark. All the fumes from what you're cooking in the basement of the house. Yeah, no. They had made this basement directly underneath the backyard. And the entire kitchen had windows on the ceiling. If you went out to the backyard, on the deck, there were panes of glass and you could look down into the kitchen and see what the people were cooking downstairs. It was pretty cool. A lot of natural light would pour in, like a vertical garden where you could plant herbs to cook with. I thought it was beautiful. It had a pretty big dining hall and the garage where you could park a car if you had one. And outside of the dining room, there was a greenhouse, full on crystal walls, sliding doors, greenhouse for you to keep plants. I love plants. This to me was heaven. I got to have a chef's kitchen, a greenhouse, the whole 9 yards. I thought I would turn the dining hall into a living room because I never entertain people. So, it would be great to have like more of a living space down there. And on the top floor was the master bedroom with 2 separate bathrooms, 2 separate walk-in closets, and 1 very big office. All in all, it was a great, great house. I loved every inch of this house. I thought it was beautiful. I loved the furniture. I loved everything about it. Oh, and by the way, the house also had an elevator that ran from the basement all the way to the top floor of the house, to the rooftop, actually. All right, so I take a look at the house, I talk to the owner, and I'm thinking, let's do it. I want to rent this. This is going to be my home for the foreseeable future. I'm going to be in this house for years to come. Oh boy, oh boy. If only I had known everything that was about to transpire. So anyway, so I tell the owner, I gave her the green light. Now, one more thing that was very suspicious to me, but I also decided to look the other way, was the fact that the landlord never asked me anything about myself. She didn't ask me what I do for a living. She didn't ask me for bank statements or a letter of employment, proof of income. She never even asked me for references from a previous landlord. None of the things that somebody renting a house like this would want to know about the tenant. She was basically A-okay. She talked to me for half an hour, showed me around, and she was ready to mambo, ready to mambo. And okay, so I should have thought that this was weird, but because it was the first time I was renting a house of this quality, I thought this was just proof that the upper class is extremely classy and elegant. They won't even discuss money, even when they have to, Sure, that's exactly what was going on. Very smart, very smart. Anyway, I gave her the green light and we were gonna sign the lease the following day. That night, the realtor sends me an email. Attached was a copy of the draft of the lease that we were going to sign the following day. Now, I may be naive, but I am not dumb. I read absolutely everything before I sign it. I am a stickler about it. So I took this file and I opened it and I read through the lease. And let me tell you something. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was reading. If your house is a luxury house, basically you can draft a lease any way you want. You don't have to abide by the laws that govern average houses anymore. Yeah, and apparently the landlord took this to heart. Let's just say she ran with this very far as her legs would go. This is the lease agreement that the landlord drafted without telling me anything. If you have a special request like this, you're supposed to discuss it with the tenant before drafting a lease agreement. You don't just sneak it in there hoping that the person's not going to read it, right? Because it's very creepy. Like it's icky. I'm not gonna say creepy, but icky. It's icky. If you read a lease that you're supposed to sign the next day, nothing has been discussed, and all of a sudden you're reading all of these clauses that were not discussed. So I opened this file, and here's what she wanted. 2 years mandatory lease, meaning I couldn't break the lease before those 2 years were up, and if at any point I wanted to leave before these 2 years, I would have to pay her for the remainder of the time. But then, after the 2 years were up, if I didn't say anything, the lease would automatically renew for another 9 years. 6 months notice. 6 months notice. So if I wanted to leave in July, I would have to let her know by January. And if I didn't give her notice, she could keep the deposit as a penalty. She wanted 5 months security deposit, by the way. In this lease agreement, I would have to pay her a penalty of 1,000 euros for each extra day that I had to stay in the house. So to me, that's the moment when I read that I said, I'm not signing this. This is insane. This is just bad shit insane. This is written in bad faith, and they just want to take all my money. And no, thank you. And for a moment, I thought, you know what? Let me see actually who this person is. And I Googled the owner's name. And what did I find out? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, she was the ex-wife of one of this country's most prominent politicians of all time. This guy was in office for a very long time. And the reason he left office, you want to know what it was? A huge corruption scandal. This man was the protagonist of the biggest corruption scandal this country has seen. And then he left office, and she was his ex-wife. I suppose she got the property, the house, in the divorce. I don't know. But this didn't make me feel much better, you see. The fact that the owner of this place was associated with the wife of this politician with no scruples did not make me feel an iota of peace and confidence that I needed to sign this lease. I could have walked away right then and there, talk to the realtor, tell him, you know what, I thought about it and I'm just backing out, sorry. I could have done that, but I didn't because I had hopes and dreams. And instead, I called the landlord and I told her, you know what, I read through this agreement and I don't agree with it. I think it's quite rapacious. There's a few clauses that you sneaked in that we didn't discuss that I don't think are very fair or normal. And I'm just not going to sign this. Plus, I found out who you are, and honestly, your reputation, not great. So, yeah. Now, she could have gotten mad. She could have told me off. Instead, what did she do? She spent 3 hours on the phone with me, convincing me that it was all a big miscommunication, that I was just wrong and I needed to rent this place, that it was going to be a wonderful experience. Now, what did you say to convince me? And I want to tell you what it was, because it's like a magician. It's like watching a magician make the Statue of Liberty disappear before your eyes, right? She told me, listen to this, that, see, she was not the owner of the house. The house was the property of a society, and she was just a beneficiary of this lease. So she didn't write this lease agreement. It was the attorney of the society, the one who wrote and penned the lease. So she didn't know they had snuck in these shady clauses. And in fact, she would be a-okay with me editing this draft any way I wanted. All she wanted was to rent this house to someone and move to a smaller place now that her children were all grown. And honestly, she didn't mind if I changed all the clauses that were there, and that I didn't agree with. On the subject of her husband's corruption case, that's the part of the conversation that I really have to bow, bow like it was like an Oscar winner speech, because this was incredible. She told me that when she had divorced this man over 20 years ago, the corruption scandal happened way after they got divorced, and she was very mad. She felt very frustrated, very impotent, that even though she had nothing to do with this man by the time the corruption scandal came out, everywhere she went, every business that she wanted to conduct, any person she talked to, the shadow of her husband's vile corruption case loomed behind her, and she couldn't really get away from that. And it wasn't fair. Just because she's a woman, it doesn't mean that her name needs to be tied forever to the name of this man that she divorced years ago. I have a heart, okay? I heard this and I kind of sympathized with her, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt. So I took my proverbial pen and edited the draft and removed everything that I thought was sketchy, and then agreed with her to sign the lease. Big mistake. Oh, all right, so I signed the lease and I moved in. It was a chilly day in November. Everything was smiling at me. I opened the gate to my brand new mansion, and what do I find? While the ad said the house was furnished and the lease said the house was furnished, was the house furnished? She had left me just the bare necessities, the bare minimum. She left me 2 carpets, 2 sofas, 1 table, the stools in the kitchen, and she didn't even leave me a mattress to sleep on. Now, I had furniture of my own, but I was living in a smaller, much smaller apartment, so I didn't have enough furniture to fill up a house this big. Plus, all along we were discussing this house, she said it was furnished. I thought the house was going to be furnished, and by furnished, they meant exactly that. 3 carpets, 2 sofas, stools in the kitchen, and a table in the office. The end. That's literally all the furniture that was in the house when I moved in. I was pretty pissed. So I called this landlord over the phone, and I'm telling her off, like, how is this possible, yada yada. And she told me that at no point did she say the house was furnished. She said maybe she could let me pick 1 or 2 pieces. I was there. She was gaslighting me about the whole conversation. I showed her, sent her screenshots of the ad saying the house was furnished. To me, it was incredible, so shameless. But you know what? I didn't want to fight, and I thought, I guess I will just have to buy furniture for the house. All right, that was point number 1. I lost count already of how many red flags we've seen so far. I think this is the 4th red flag, right? Okay. So then what happened was that everything seemed okay, but each day we would find something else that was broken. The first day, I realized that the main gate to the house The lock was broken. You could put the key in, but you could not turn it, so the house remained open and anyone could enter just by pushing it in. It didn't make me feel very safe sleeping in a house like this. I talked to the landlord. How long did it take her to send me someone? 1 week. I spent 1 week sleeping without a door, basically. Anyone could have entered my house and killed me. Eventually, she sent someone who fixed the lock, but I didn't have the same luck with most everything else. The first big thing, we moved in November, and by December, it was already cold enough that we wanted to turn on the heaters. Now, when she gave me the tour of the house, she told me that the entire house got heat up with this radiating heating system underneath the floor of the basement. Basically what they do is they put, I know this has a name in English, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. They put some sort of like a hose with hot water underneath the floor, and when you turn in the heater, like hot water goes through this hose, and then the whole floor is suddenly heated and it's very cozy and warm. You can walk barefoot, whatever. So she said that if I turned that on, the heat from the floor was going to radiate up through the 4 stories of the house. And if I let it, if I kept it on, the whole house would be warm, no need for any extra heating. That was broken. It didn't work. 100% broken, 0 heat coming up from the floor. It was freezing cold. Now, imagine paying an exorbitant amount of money every month to rent a mansion with a pool in the center of a European city and having to spend the entire winter with a coat on in your own house, a feather Nordic coat, right, and gloves, right? Because the house is freezing, cold as ice. I called her a billion times to get her to fix this, and it took her months to send me someone. In the end, the winter was over and the heaters had not been fixed. I spent the entirety of the winter living with a coat on in my own house. Just picture yourself, just imagine this. Imagine eating dinner at your own kitchen, in your own house, wearing a gigantic puffer jacket, right? Trying to not stain your puffer jacket with the steak that you're eating, trying to eat quickly because the steak is getting cold every second on your plate, right? It's crazy. It's the worst experience, and paying like insane amounts of money to be able to have the privilege of living in these conditions. So I'm already pretty pissed because I'm paying crazy amounts of money to live like this. But then there were other issues. When we were trying to figure out how to fix the situation with the freezing cold, right? There was an AC unit in the dining hall that I turned into a living room. And so we decided to try and see if it would work as a heater, and we turned it on. Big mistake. A putrid smell came out of that AC unit. I cannot explain to you just how putrid the smell was. It was horrible. So I called the landlord and she sent someone, and guess what the technician said? He replaced the filters in the AC and told me he didn't have any more budget to do anything else. But if I wanted, he could spray some fabric softener on the filter so maybe it could mask the smell. This is the level of negligence we're talking about. When she finally sends someone to fix anything, that's the solution they offer me. Fabric softener sprayed on the putrid AC filters. So not only am I freezing my own home, now I get to freeze in pestilence. This is terrible. The plumbing system was a disaster. It clogged all the time. They had blackout blinds throughout the house. They were all broken. The electrical system in the entire house was damaged. The boxes, all the cords were everywhere. They were burned. They had like copper coming out of them. It was somewhere you could even step on because it was on the front lawn, like on the grass. At night, sometimes if it was raining, the breakers to the entire house would get shut down, and then you had to go all the way to the basement in pitch dark blackness to find which switch will turn on the lights again. The lights on the entire house, especially in the backyard, will blink constantly because of issues with the electrical system. Then we had issues with plumbing, but you know, the big surprise was still to come, because she told me not to lift the lid on the pool until the spring because the water would get rotten, and like the treatment and whatever, right? So I listened to her advice, you know, and I didn't open that lid until March. Oh boy, what did I find when I opened the lid to the pool? All right, at first I thought it was just a cosmetic matter. I thought it was just a matter of looks, right? Because when I took the lid off, all the water was rotten anyway. Everything was disgusting, but there were a bunch of tiles missing. The black stone Kilimanjaro tiles were missing, and I realized that they were coming off very easily from the sides of the pool. Like if you did like this, they would come off. And it was a hazard because they were super sharp. They were all in the bottom of the pool. I was afraid of going barefoot in the pool because I was afraid of getting cut with the tiles or the surface underneath the tiles that were missing. And this was going to be a big problem. So I talked to the owner, who promised she would send me someone closer to the summer to fix the pool. All right, so I already knew that the pool was going to be a disaster, and I needed to take care of this before I lost my entire summer. So I decided it would be a good idea to drain the pool. Big, fat mistake. Big, fat, bold mistake. I drained the pool, and all of a sudden, that night, I start hearing some splashes inside the house. Yes, splashing sounds. Not quite like water lapping against a surface, no. It was more like an animal swimming in water inside my house. This is like in a horror movie when they tell you the phone call is coming from inside the house. Exactly the same vibe. The splashing sounds were coming from inside the house. So I tried to figure out where these sounds were coming from. Oh, yes, they were coming from inside the elevator. That's right. By draining the pool, the water, somehow, by some sort of negligence, trickery of faith, the water ended up flooding the elevator shaft.
Por eso quiero que esté flash. Contra la puerta.
So I had to send the elevator up to the rooftop, sorry, to try to see what was going on inside of it. I managed to put my iPhone in and take video. It was completely flooded, but there was one thing I was not expecting, and it's that we had been sharing this mansion with rats. There were rats taking a plunge in the elevator shaft, swimming around, having a time of their lives. At least the rats were gonna have a good time swimming this summer. Not me, though. So After realizing that I had been paying through the nose to live in a house that I shared with rats, I thought that was enough. I about just had it, right? So I called the landlord, who sent someone, because it was within the warranty of the elevator, to drain the shaft and, I don't know, handle the pests. And that's the point where I told her that I was tired and I wanted to leave. And that was not what I was expecting when I leased her house. She apologized profusely and promised to fix everything by the summer. So I gave her, I gave her I took a leap of faith, let's say, and decided to give her a chance to fix things. And what would she do from this point on? Instead of just ignoring my phone calls, she started sending me contractors to take a look, to do theater around my house. I would have to stay home, open the door for the contractors, show them around, explain what the problem was, see them take measurements, and then they would leave and never come back. I talked to one of these contractors, and he told me that she never approved the budget. Basically, she was just sending me people to keep my mouth shut so that I would think that things were being handled when they weren't. One of these contractors that she hired to fix the blinds that were stuck, I actually asked for his phone number, and then I talked to him. And he told me that she never paid him, that he had to go after her for weeks to get paid, and she still hadn't paid him a dime. He showed me text messages between him and the landlord where he gave her an estimate for what it would cost, and it was 300 euros, and she told him that was an outlandish amount. I had no words to express like how shocked and appalled I felt when I read that exchange between the landlord and this man. He fixed my blinds and he never got paid for it by the landlord. So anyway, by the end of this lease, nothing got fixed. One of the engineers that came to see the pool and walked around the house and took measurements told us that the pool actually was losing water and the water was going to the foundations of the house. He asked us if we had seen any signs of humidity in the basement, and we had. So he said, he said the water that the pool was losing was probably going to make that house eventually collapse because it was going to the foundations of the house. So when he left, we went into the basement, and now we had an explanation for the putrid smell in the AC. Now we had an explanation for the floor of the kitchen that I hadn't mentioned, but was continually getting bubbles that would burst, and everything was a mess of splinters, and you couldn't even be barefooted in the house. I now had an explanation for what I would find seconds later, because the AC thing clicked in my head. So I went to the room that was behind that AC unit. It was a pretty big closet, and I took out the cabinets, and on the backside, all of those cabinets were full of black mold. It was so stinky and disgusting and gross. I couldn't believe I had hanged stuff of mine on those closets, on those cabinets. It was just so disgusting. And of course, the floor in the kitchen, the AC unit, now everything clicked, everything made sense, why everything was broken the way it was. One of the guy that went to see the pool, he took a look at the pool filter and pump, and he told me that in his 20 years looking at pools, he had never in his life seen a filter as filthy and disgusting as that one. He showed me the sand that he took out of the filter, and the pestilence was flowing all over my house. It took days for me to air it out. It was so disgusting. He told me that he estimated that nobody had done any maintenance on that pool for at least a decade. Oh my God, it was so sobering, the entire experience. So at this point, I am looking at everything that's, basically falling apart around me. I know the landlord has 3 months of my security deposit. My lease is not up yet. Thank God I didn't sign the predatory lease she sent me initially. Now I realize, like, in hindsight, how broken and damaged everything was. Now it made sense to me that that lease agreement was actually written by her, or at least under her supervision. She knew exactly what was wrong with the house. I could only see the patterns in hindsight. It took me a while to figure out that everything was broken, but she knew. She knew before renting this place out to me the state the house was in. Her mindset was this. She thought, anyone who comes to rent this place is not going to take it. They're going to leave. They're not even going to put up with a couple of months of this insanity. So I have to make a lease that will allow me to win no matter what happens. And that's how she came up with the security deposit swindle. How does it work? Well, very simple. You have a house that's falling apart. You find a tenant that is willing to rent it from you. You ask for 5 months in advance and 2.5 years of permanence. The tenant signs, gives you 5 months, and he notices by the second month that the house is full of hidden flaws, hidden vices that they could never have anticipated, and they want to leave. But if they break the contract before the 2 years are up, she gets to keep the entirety of the security deposit. If they decide not to leave, you're trapped by that security deposit in the house for 2.5 years. So either way, she wins. If you stay 2.5 years, that's 2.5 years of insane rent you're paying while the house is falling apart around you. If you decide to leave and break the lease, you can't take it anymore, she's gonna get to keep your entire security deposit. And it's even better if you leave, because if you leave, she's now free to rent the same house to another unsuspecting tenant with the same lease agreement and getting to keep 5 months again. It's like having infinite bank loans that you don't have to pay back and that you have to pay no interest on with no risk. It's a win-win-win, super win situation for the landlord, completely rapacious and predatory for the tenant. So what did we do? How did I get out of this? She had 3 months security deposit from me because I didn't sign the crazy lease, remember? So she had 3 months. So I told her, listen, I am very disappointed in this house. It's not what I wanted. You have rented me a house that's falling apart. You haven't fixed anything. You've had 8 months to fix it. Nothing has been done. Now, I love this house. I would love to stay in this house for years and years to come, but not like this. So we have 2 options. The first option is I don't renew the lease. By the end of this year, I'm gone. The second option is if you promise that you're going to fix everything that needs fixing, I will stay and renew the lease for another year, but you're not going to charge me for the months when you're fixing things. So for the last 2 months of this lease, you're going to pay for them with the deposit you already have. The only reason I didn't ask for the full 3 months back was because by the law, one of these months has to be deposited into the city council account. So she supposedly didn't have that last month. She didn't dispose of it. So she had to wait until the end of the lease to be able to retrieve that from the bank account in the city council. So anyway, that's how I got back. I managed to stay in this house without paying rent for 2 months that she took from the security deposit. And by the time I left, I was expecting her. You know, I left when the lease was up. She didn't fix anything. I stayed for the entirety of the lease, a full year of this insanity. And by the end of it, I was expecting her to do the right thing and give me back that month that was left, but she never did. To this day, she still has 1 full month of mine somewhere. And that's the story of the first dream house that I rented. Now let's go to the second house. Up to this point, I learned 2 things. The first one was to always read the lease agreements. The second one was never to give anybody more than 2 or 3 months security deposit, because they can swindle you, and they will. So never ever sign a lease with more than 2 or 3 months security deposit tops. I also learned that when a landlord says furnished, it doesn't mean furnished. It doesn't necessarily mean furnished. So even though you take all of these precautions, if you have a crafty landlord, they can still scam you out of your hard-earned money. And this is what the second story is about. So after the first lease was over and it was such a dramatic experience, I decided to start afresh, to open a new chapter and get a clean slate by moving to a new city, a city I knew nobody in. To me, that meant whatever happened there was going to be an adventure, and also we could leave the past behind. So I packed everything I owned and sent it to a storage, and then I packed the things that I actually use into 13 pieces of luggage and hauled all of that to a new city. This time around, I thought, you know what? I am going to do things differently. I'm not just going to rely on a shady realtor with no office. This time, I am going to go to a luxury realty agency. These are places that have a reputation to maintain, so you would think they have a vested interest in making sure none of these houses are scams. But it doesn't necessarily work like that, and you will see. Here's the thing. Why are luxury realty agencies the way they are? Well, you see, a normal agency normally asks for 1 month commission. In some countries, the owner pays for the full month. In some countries, it is the tenant that pays the commission for the realtors. And in some countries, you go 50-50. The owner pays half of it, and you pay half of it as a tenant. But in the case of luxury realty agencies, they want 2 pieces of the pie. They want to double dip their chip in your dip. And so they get 1 month from the tenant and 1 month from the property owner. And in exchange, you are supposed to get something that is legit, right? This is like the cornerstone of luxury real estate. Is not only do they handpick the best property, they make sure that everything is kosher so that you don't have to go into these transactions worried about the outcome. That doesn't work, all right? That doesn't work. Now, the only thing that I will say in favor of these luxury realty agencies is the fact that because they have such a big, juicy commissions on each one of their sales or each one of their places they rent, they do commit a sizable budget into advertising each unit. So they sent a crew of multiple cameras, lighting, technicians, drones, the whole works to this house to make a little ad to advertise it in social media. And luckily for you, I saved it. As you can see, this is a massive house. This is a mansion sitting on a cliff. It's 15,000 square feet. It is so big, I thought it is impossible to utilize the full extension of this house if you're a normal human being. Like, you would have to exist in multiple places at the same time in order to be able to use every single one of the rooms in this house in 1 week. It is that massive. When you first go into the house, the first thing that jumps out at you is the gate. This is an impressive door, and I think they brought it from somewhere like Indonesia. Just imagine someone flying out a 2-ton door from Asia. Pointless, excessive. This is the life that I was aiming for. So anyway, you go into the house, and the first thing you see to your right is a Zen garden. Now, this is a very important, critical piece of information, which is why I want you to put a pin on it. This garden had a koi pond in the middle, and it had koi fish in it swimming, and it had 2 statues of Hindu gods or goddesses, I'm not sure. One was a massive head. It was just the head, massive head like this tall, made entirely out of stone, just sitting there. And the other one was a human figure. It was life-size, sitting in the lotus position in the koi pond. At first, I thought, this is Buddha. You know, you look at it quickly, you're not really paying that much attention. No, it's not Buddha, because Buddha is fat and bald, and this guy was slender, and it had some sort of weird hairdress or hairdo. So I don't know what kind of Buddhist god or goddess this was. So entering the house, you have a wraparound terrace, and on the first floor, like the main floor, you have a living room, huge dining room, a kitchen that was fully equipped, and it was a chef's kitchen. It was delightful to cook in, with a kitchen table that was a booth, so very comfy for having breakfast or something. And it had a toy room that was very sizable, with a little table and a couch. And then you would, you know, climb the stairs to the second floor, to the top floor of the house. This is where the bedrooms were. It had a boy bedroom. It had a bunch of bunk beds. I don't think this is because they thought you were gonna move in with 15 children. I think this is because maybe they thought you were gonna be hosting pajama parties all the time, I suppose. So they just decided to make bunk beds a feature in this house. It had a terrace with a little house to play house in and a little picnic table. And then there was a pretty big living room with a made-to-measure couch that was huge and a TV. And then there were two other bedrooms, a girl's bedroom, beautiful mural of houses and stuff. It was a 3D mural because it had stuff hanging and like poking out from the walls. And the girl's room also had a pretty massive bathroom and walk-in closet situation. And then you had the master bedroom. And it had such a big wow factor. This room was... It was huge. It was enormous. It had panoramic windows, a terrace, a living room inside the bedroom, finishes that were so exquisite. Everything was just beautiful. And then it had two full bathrooms. One was entirely made out of white marble. It was marble from ceiling to floor. And not only was it marble, it wasn't marble tiles, you know, it was marble panels that spanned the entirety of the wall. So there were like no seams anywhere. The whole floor of the room was made out of marble. The shower was marble. The walls were marble. The ceiling was marble. The sink was made out, it was marble everywhere. And then they had the same thing but in black in the other bathroom. So I suppose one for her and one for him. And then each bathroom had its own walk-in closet, and it was a 2-story closet. So you had 2 stories to put your stuff away. Pretty impressive. So I really like the bedroom area. And one thing that they sold me out on, like it was like they made a huge deal out of this, was, you know, this house is very safe. It has safety features that you wouldn't believe. You see, this entire top floor doubles as a panic room. They had built a gigantic, massive iron door with a safety contraption that was bulletproof and that you could close, and you would be completely isolated from the rest of the house. So in case like there were burglars, say, entering your house, or someone came to kidnap you, you could simply slide the door to this panic room and stay in it with all of your family until whatever threat had been neutralized. And I just want to tell you this because it's like a brush stroke of color that helps you understand the world of hyper luxurious mega mansions a little bit better. These are things that I call parlor tricks, okay? These are gimmicky things. In every single one of these videos of mega mansions, you will always see one of these. Like, it's something to make the audience go, wow, oh, it looks so nice. Almost never work, and in fact, it's akin to a movie studio. Here's why. Once I moved into the house, I realized this panic room had another door. Yes, it had another door in the living room that connected the living room upstairs to the kitchen below. I suppose somebody put that door in there because they were expecting the help to bring up snacks while they were watching a baseball game or something in the living room upstairs. So it was the flimsiest of doors. I can't emphasize enough just how flimsy this door was. It was made out of just regular wood, and the doorknob reminded me of my high school classroom, like the type of doorknobs that they had with ridiculous locks that you could find keys for in any hardware store. And if you force it a little bit, it'll just open. You could even use like a card to get in. It was just that cheap, embarrassing, and like ridiculous. And then if you open that door, there was like a spiral staircase all the way to the kitchen. And guess what? The kitchen was connected to the garage. There was a door that went from the garage to the kitchen. Your intention was to kidnap me. All you had to do to get into the panic room was go into the house, through the garage, pass through the kitchen, go up, take any card, and just go into my panic room. The whole bulletproof iron door rendered completely useless by this fact. Yeah, this is the type of thing that you see in these mega mansions that nobody tells you about. And well, yeah, that's the kind of thing that happens. Now, I wasn't mad, I didn't care, but you know, it's just something that adds a little bit of color to the story. And then on the bottom of this, there was the basement. Now, because this house was sitting on a cliff, even though I call it a basement, it didn't really feel like a basement because the whole cliffside was turned into windows. So there was a ton of natural light pouring in, and you just felt like you were in one more floor of a regular normal house. And what they had done with the basement was, it was beautiful. I'm not gonna lie, it was incredible. I had never seen anything like this in my entire life. You see, they turned the basement of this house into a bar, right? So I guess they really liked entertaining people because they turned this into a bar. It wasn't just a bar. It had like this feel, this intimate feel, like some sort of speakeasy. It had like a piano and leather seating and like a deep green wall. It even had restrooms for ladies and men, you know, with the signs on the doors. Very professional looking. Like the gentleman restroom had a urinal in it, like the whole 9 yards. And they had something that, to me, I'm not a professional, okay? But to me, it looked like a gigantic turd. like a jumbo-sized turd in the middle of the bar under the counter. I'm talking gigantic proportions. Like, this was not a normal turd. This turd was so high. Like, if you wanted to rest on top of the counter, like, you would have to go like this because the counter was so high. It was like chest high if you're standing. And underneath, there was this turd. But it wasn't a turd. No, it was actually a tree trunk. And the owner of the house was extremely proud of this tree trunk. In fact, this was the first story he would tell anyone who would listen. And so I'm going to share it with you.
In a forest far, far away, there exists a realm untouched by time. It is here that a well-to-do boy embarks on a journey with his friends. Together, they traverse this pristine wilderness, utterly unaware of the discovery that awaits them. After crossing a lively river, our young explorer stumbles upon something quite extraordinary. A fallen tree, but not just any fallen tree. This one is remarkable in both size and shape. Its trunk is unusually large, a massive behemoth of wood. And to his astonishment, it resembles unmistakably the curious shape of a dookie.
Because they were building his house at the time, he simply lifted a phone and called his grandfather and told him that he had just fallen in love with a tree trunk in the middle of the forest. And the grandfather actually listened and sent him a helicopter to pick up the gigantic turd-shaped tree trunk from the jungle, lift it up into the sky, transport it all the way to the city, to the cliff where his house was being built on. And because it didn't fit through any doors or staircases, they had to swing swing this massive tree trunk into position through the window that faced the cliff. I swear, I don't think Fitzcarraldo went through so much trouble.
The dookie.
I was flabbergasted when I heard the story. It didn't even look good. It was just horrible. It was a horrible tree trunk in the middle of a bar that nobody was going to use. And I was just impressed. I was impressed. I'm not gonna lie, I was impressed. So anyway, that was the bar. I didn't like the tree trunk. I didn't think I was ever gonna see it. Like I said, this house was way too big to even to utilize. So I thought, nobody's gonna come into the bar anyway, and I was right. So I just forgot about it. Now that I have explained to you what this house looked like, we can now get down to what happened in it. Now, if the other story was a sandwich, a layer sandwich, this one, I can't even, it's just a salad, and it has so many moving parts. Like, it's just a salad of insanity. It's so bizarre. So many different things happened. It's putting this in order is a headache in and on itself. So I tried to make a single thread out of this, but I think I'm gonna break it down into 3 separate argumental lines. But keep in mind, everything that I'm gonna tell you happened simultaneously. So while one thing was going on, the other one was happening at the same time in parallel, okay? So let's just give you the title for this part of the video. This is the second dream house. Second dream home. Scams, and a little bit of an attempted murder. I don't even know if what happened in this house belongs in a Kubrick movie, in an Agatha Christie novel, or if it's just a concoction of my twisted brain, some sort of nightmare scenario. Because it is so chaotic and so bizarre, and it has so many different flavors mixed in. So, all right, so let's start at the beginning. I saw the house in Sotheby's, and I called the realtor because I wanted to take a tour of the house. When I went to the house, again, they assured me the house was fully furnished, everything was furnished. When I went in to see it, there were tenants living in the house. They were just getting everything out of the house. So they had all of their staff packing stuff as I took the tour of the house. Because of this, while everything was furnished, I couldn't really see much of the detail because there was so much going on around me. Still, I didn't see anything out of order, and I also thought, you know what? This house was newly built. It had only been built 5 years prior, so there was not enough time for anyone to be negligent. I had no doubt in my mind after meeting the owner of the house and hearing the third experience that this guy had no common sense, no practicality, and that if the house had been built earlier, like say 20 years before, it would be in shambles. But because it was so new, I thought there was not enough time for anyone to ruin any aspect of this house. So I guess it's safe to rent. Right. Okay, so so we're gonna sign the lease. One thing that made me feel really good was that the owner wasn't asking me for anything outlandish. Like, the lease was just a normal lease. There were no weird clauses. He was only asking me for 2 months rent in advance. Very normal, very nice, very kosher. And I was feeling pretty good about it until I told the realtor that I wanted to sign this lease. That's when things started taking a little bit of a twist, let's just say. So first, the owner told me that he couldn't come. He couldn't make it to the lease signing part of the process, but he would send a representative of his family to sign for him. This was perfectly legal. I would find out. But it was still a little bit uncomfortable. Like, I want to know who I'm renting the house from. Why are you not coming to sign? This is a very big deal, and I don't think you're very busy considering everything. So why are you not coming to sign the lease? So this took me aback a little. So As usual, when I get suspicious, I use Google. So I Google this guy's name, and it turns out he was one of the heirs to the biggest media network company in that country. So his grandpa basically owned the biggest TV chains, radio, newspapers, the whole 9 yards. Now, the grandpa seems like had a very happy hippie dream of having a communal living situation with all of his grandchildren. So he bought the whole cliff and built the gated community, and each and every single one of the houses in it, I think there were like 15 houses on that cliff. It turns out the grandpa had paid for them to build each and every one of these houses, hoping that the entire family could move into the hill and lead a happy life. And what happened is what usually happens in these families, and the grandchildren are not interested in the communal hippie happy living. They're interested in money, hard sounding metal money, ka-ching. And they see these houses as a means to sustain themselves without ever having to work a day in their lives. So instead of living in them, all of the 15 houses on the cliff were actually rented out to random strangers. It's so sad. I'm sure the grandpa wasn't very happy with this, but it is what it is. Now, at the time, I didn't know this guy was probably desperate for money. He was. How can you be the heir of such a massive fortune and still be desperate for money? Don't worry, you'll find out. So he didn't want to come, and they claimed he was living in Miami, so he couldn't fly there. They claimed that he was a very busy person, he didn't have time, yada, yada, yada. But at the end, at the last minute, he decided he did want to be. He was very specific and adamant about the time and to the minute, to the moment that he wanted the lease to be signed. This was very strange. This was a very strange request. We tried negotiating to do it on another day and another time, but he was not flexible. It was either at that time, that day at that time, or it was not going to happen. So we decided to honor his request and meet him at that time and place. However, we did have our doubts, and we kept brainstorming reasons why someone would be this specific about something. There was a lot of money on the table. Anyone on their right mind would do their best to be flexible and come. So why did he have such specific time and place that he wanted to sign this in? We came to several different theories or hypotheses. One was the guy was probably in some sort of rehab center where he was committed, and he would only get like an hour to handle his own private businesses, and that happened to be the time that he chose. That was one theory that seemed plausible. He wouldn't want to tell us that he's committed in a rehab center for sure, so that's why he didn't give us any explanation of why it had to be at that time. But this would give him a very small window of opportunity that he had to take, and it had to be at that time and at that place, right? Yeah, maybe it's a little crazy, but it's a possibility. But that's before my phone gave me a notification, and when I looked at my phone, it was an app that I have installed called Moon that tracks the moon and tells you anything happening with the moon. I love looking at the sky, so I have applications like this. So I opened the Moon app, and it told me that the exact same day and time that this guy chose to sign the lease was actually the new moon. That was the exact minute the new moon was happening that month. And that was extremely strange. And researching online, I realized that some types of rituals involve using the phases of the moon, and people tend to use the new moon phase to open new chapters. So when you want to start something new, you do it on the new moon as some sort of ritual to begin things with the right foot or something, which was eerily fitting. So now we didn't know if we were dealing with a drug addict or a Satanist. That was the two main possibilities that we were entertaining. Of course, it could always be something completely unrelated that we had no idea about, sure, but it was an exercise we did. Anyway, so by the end of the video, we would come to the realization that it was actually both. We were spot on. He was a satanic drug addict, but yeah, you'll see. This is a slow burn type of story, all right? Keep this in mind. So anyway, we decided to sign the lease with the guy and honor his request and do it at the time and place that he chose at the exact minute that he wanted to do it. And so he came to the house and we met him. This is when he told me the story of the gigantic turd-shaped trunk. And he seemed to be just like one clueless trust fund kid, snobby trust fund kid with no common sense. I didn't see anything evil. I didn't see an evil twinkle in his eye. My previous experience was similar. Like the person who opened the door to me and gave me the tour was the landlord, and she seemed like a normal person. And this guy seemed like a normal, harmless person, but who knows? Anyway, we signed the lease, and then once we moved in, we realized several things. Like the day we moved in was such a mess. The house had not been cleaned or painted, so everything was dirty. There was a layer of grime in the kitchen that was probably about this thick, a mix of fat from cooking and just dirt piled on top. These people, I knew it. I saw the tenants. They had a bunch of people hired as help, so what was going on? I don't know. Everything was filthy. The walls were all stained. Like they had, I don't know, like they had elephants running through the house. Everything had stains, all the walls. It was pretty messy. And it's not like I had staff already because I had just moved into the city. I was new to the city. I knew nobody. I had to like conduct interviews and find personnel for the house. So I was now sitting in a filthy, very expensive dream house, trying to find staff to help me. And so I gave the landlord a phone call and told him, hey, do you think you can clean the house? All the experience I had previously, the owners would always give me a freshly painted, clean house when I moved in. This was the first exception to that rule, and I wasn't feeling very good about it. But that was about to change, because 5 minutes later, after I hung up with the owner, and the realtor was still in the house with me, somebody came in to tell us they were cutting out the electricity to the house. There was a technician from the power company that were going to cut the service to the house. Why? There was an outstanding balance on the property that had been lagging for months. Nobody had paid for the service for months, to the point where now they were just gonna cut the electricity to the house. The realtor got so nervous that she talked to the technician from the power company and bribed him so that he would hook us back up without telling the company, so that she could solve this with the owner behind my back, I suppose. But that's the first day, the fresh first day into your new dream mega mansion. Welcome. So I'm feeling kind of weird. The owner didn't clean the house. They didn't paint the house. The power was going to be cut. On top of that, guess what? The house was not furnished. So even though they told me it was furnished and it was on the lease that it was furnished and I saw the furniture was gone. So they had time to take the furniture out, but they didn't have time to clean the house or paint it, right? So I talked to the owner again, and I'm like, they were gonna cut our power, and on top of that, there's no furniture. You told me the house was furnished. What is going on? And so the guy told me, well, it's partially furnished, because he left me a table, some chairs, a couch, and anything that was not nailed to a wall was taken away. So like I had the booth in the kitchen, it was attached to the wall, impossible to take it out. The tree turd in the bar.
The dookie.
A table, and a couch upstairs. That was the entirety of the furniture in the house. I didn't even have mattresses to sleep on. I had to go find mattresses. I went to Costco last minute to find mattresses because I had no mattresses in the house. So that was just like the first impression. It's not a very good one, is it? Now, whew, all right. So as I was touring the house, after realizing that there was no furniture, I went room by room to see what they had actually left in the house, right? And they left some of the artwork, including a hermaphrodite angel with inscriptions that were written backwards in it, all the zodiac signs, crystals, and an eye carved on his hand. A very strange sculpture. It had the face of a man, breasts like a hentai character, a loincloth, and it had just the eerest, weirdest, I don't know, vibe to it. Now, this was placed in the dining room. It was made out of bronze, and it was rusted only like green, the type of green rust that bronze gets, only in two places. It had a rust stain on his hand where the eye was carved. The hand was doing this gesture and it was facing the front. And then it had another one over his own eye, as if someone had done this this to the statue with some sort of liquid. We realized this about the statue later. Like, we just saw it at first and thought, this is so strange. Now, think about it. The owner only wanted to sign the lease during the new moon, and then you enter the house and you come across this. This is the artwork that he chooses to have in his dining room. It's very odd. Very, very odd. Now, after a while of looking at the statue, I realized that if you stand right in front of the statue, the hand that the statue is holding up is right, like the perfect height to do this to you if you stand next to it. So if you stand in front of the statue, and you put your head, like your face, on the statue's hand, the hand of the statue would do this sign to you perfectly. And if you then take your own hand and put it on the face of the statue, it is the perfect length. Your arm is the perfect length, so you can do the same sign on the statue's face. And this was all so strange because the rust meant that maybe somebody had been doing this with some sort of substance in their hands, and it all sounded like some sort of crazy satanic ritual of some sort. The room that the statue was in had a very big crystal table. It had 13 seats, and they all had brown stains on the seat. Very strange brown stains. I had my maid try to take them out with a fabric cleaning spray, and it didn't work out. She couldn't clean the chairs. But I don't know, I don't even know what the source of the stains were, but to me, I don't know, maybe I have an overactive imagination, but the only thing I could picture in my mind when I saw this was 13 acolytes of the with robes sitting around a table doing weird rituals in front of the statue, and then a daisy chain on the chairs. That's all that came to my mind. So when that happened, and considering the guy had this obsession with the new moon, I had some people that I had hired pick up the statue and take it into the storage room in the basement where the bar was, and just drop it there because I didn't want to see the statue anymore. It just gave me the creeps. All right, so now I have a very high suspicion that the owner of this house is at a minimum a part of the Illuminati. And think about it, this guy was the grandson of the owner of the biggest media network on the country. So yeah, and he was married to a woman, and this is what they look like. And she had a jewelry line where she had the ads for the jewelry line featured her face, and guess what sign she was doing? Yeah, she was covering one eye with his hand, wearing the jewelry. So I'm getting a picture of the situation here that I don't really like very much. At the same time, I can't help but feel like I am being a paranoid, crazy person because this is just so outlandish and insane, right? Okay. Anyway, so let's move on with the story. So we're still gonna talk more about them, but we're gonna put it aside for a minute. Now we're gonna talk about the scam. You know, super wealthy, they're the heir of an immense fortune. Why would he be desperate for money? And how is he gonna scam you if you didn't give him more than 2 months security deposit? I'm glad you asked. See, there are many, many ways in which a desperate person can scam you if you let them. And in this part of the video, I'm going to show you how, even if you don't give them anything in advance, they can still try. Here's what he did. It started out pretty innocently. They always try to dip one toe in the pool before taking the plunge. And here's how he did it. First, he sent me a text message telling me that for some odd reason, my power meter had been crossed with the power meter on his brother's mega mansion. You see, the house next to the one I had leased belonged to his brother, and they hadn't finished the construction there. There was nobody living in it. Apparently, for some reason, the 2 meters were crossed. The power that I was using was being charged to his brother and vice versa. So he had to get it straight, and I owed his brother 300 euros. Now, at the moment, I thought, you know what? This is a very kind of miserable reaction. If I was renting out my house to someone and they were paying this insane amount of money every month, and this was just a measly 300 euros thing, I would pay for it out of pocket. But you know what? I am not the one to judge other people. Okay, fine. He wanted to fix the meter situation. Fine. I gave him the 300 euros he had asked me. And it was a mistake because it sets a precedent. Now he thinks I'm dumb, easily gullible, and I fork out, money easily. So now he's getting bold. And now he wants me to basically pay for every single maintenance thing in this house that you can think of. Things that were not written in the lease that I was supposed to take care of. Now suddenly I am being pushed into hiring people to handle them. The house had a lot of plants in it. You need a gardener to take care of that. Now I was the one who had to pay for the gardener, and the landlord told me that I had to pay for the gardener because if a gardener didn't come twice a week, every week, then the plants would die and it would cost a lot of money to replace, especially like the climbing plants, blah, blah, blah. They were very expensive. So now I had to hire a gardener. He, however, was generous enough that he could give me the contact of his old gardener, the one who have been taking care of the house for years, so that he can continue his labor under me. Basically, he wanted to stop paying the gardener and he wanted me to pick up the tab. And I was stupid and I was dumb and I did. And then he wanted me to pay the biologist. See, he had a koi fish pond. And remember that I told you to put a pin on it? All right. So the koi fish apparently aren't very easy to maintain. Like, yes, you can feed them like regular fish, but if you don't have someone coming to check the state of the water in the pond, etc., they could die and it would be horrible. And koi fish are expensive and difficult to grow. And so I needed to have a biologist come make sure the fish were all right. He would come just once a month. It was just 100 euros every time he came to the house. But there I was having to pay for this also. I didn't want the koi fish. I didn't even know they needed maintenance. And here I was paying the biologist. And here's one thing with the biologist, by the way. I think he suffered from Asperger's syndrome because every time he came, not only did I have to pay him, I would have to listen to him talk endlessly, ramble about his passions. And in one of these conversations, he actually told me the story of how he built the Zen garden pond. He built everything. He was a biologist. He chose like the soil, the construction, the water, everything. And he had to find the actual koi fish to put in the pond. And he made this to the taste of the owner of the house. And guess what the owner chose for the pond? He was very specific. He wanted 3 white koi fish and 3 black koi fish. Nothing else, nothing in between, no orange, just 3 black, fully black koi fish, 3 fully white koi fish. And I took this as another sign of his racism. And from that moment on, it was very difficult for me to pay the bill of the biologist every month to come and take care of the fish he had swimming in the pond by the entrance of the house. So, okay, so now I'm paying the gardener, I'm paying the biologist for the koi pond. Now, the house had a bunch of stuff that didn't work because, you know, it's a house. It wasn't as bad as the other one, but there was still a bunch of stuff that needed to be addressed. For example, and this is going to be something that you're going to love because this is featured in many luxury homes, even middle of the road homes, not necessarily mega mansions. You've seen it a bunch of times. You have probably fantasized about this and it sucks. It sucks so much. I've had so much trouble with these sinks. So let me tell you, do you know those sinks that are made entirely out of marble and it's like just one piece, like a slab of marble with a slit? The effect is really nice because when you open the faucet, like you don't really see where the water is going. There's like no drain, no visible drain. It kind of seeps through the slit on the marble and disappears. It's like magic. The house had sinks like this throughout the entire house. Now, here's the problem with these sinks. And you're gonna thank me after this because every time you see a tour of one of these houses and you see one of these sinks, you're gonna realize what a big nightmare they are. I have never had a sink of this that doesn't clog. They clog all the time. Why do they clog? Simple. Because you cannot remove the stupid slab of marble off. Things roll down the slit, things roll down the slit and there is an actual drain underneath the marble. It's like a marble helmet over a regular sink. It has a hole the water goes into. It has a regular pipe. Even if you don't see it, it's there. So what happens is things roll through the slit. In a normal sink, what you would do is you take the drain out and you clean it and you put it back in and that's it. Your sink works. But if you have a gigantic slab of marble placed on top that you cannot remove because it is attached to the wall and something clogs the sink, good luck. Good luck. You know what happens? It starts overflowing with water and water starts coming out everywhere and you have no way to fix it. You have to call a plumber every single time they clog, and they clog all the freaking time. It's a disaster. I don't know how they continue to make these stupid sinks. They don't work. It's always a headache. So anyway, this house had like 10 of these sinks. So they were continuously getting clogged. And he would send this guy that he had hired. This was a Mexican dude called Filio. Now, he called them the architect Filio because apparently this guy had an architecture degree that he got in the University of Mexico. Now, this degree, I don't know. He never did anything properly. It was a mess. So he would send this guy, and this guy would come and unclog. I don't know how. I don't know what kind of kung fu magic he used, but he would unclog this, and it would work for a day, and then the next day it would be clogged again. This guy decided to fix the sinks one and for all. I guess the owner of the house told him that he better get it fixed this time, and it better not be expensive, because what he did, he went next door to the construction site of the brothers' mega mansion, and he got stuff from the construction, and he found some sort of plastic tube. He found a bunch of plastic tubes laying around the construction, and he went to my garage and he took a drill and drilled holes on them. And then he decided to place this on each and every sink over the slit. I suppose in his mind, This was supposed to work as a strainer of some sort so that things wouldn't roll through the slit, right? Like hair or like a eye contact or whatever. Here's the problem. First of all, it looked horrible. It looked like something that somebody had fixed at a favela. But on top of that, it didn't work. It didn't work because there was a gap in between. It wasn't thick enough. So it didn't span the entirety of the width of the slit. It actually had a gap in between the slit and the sink. So things continued to slide in there. And we couldn't even take it off. They were hideous. And we couldn't even take them off because he had used some sort of crazy super glue to glue it to the marble. And now we were stuck with this horrible fixture on every single one of our bathrooms, thanks to Filio, the Mexican architect. So that's the thing. And now the last person that he'd made me pay was his old car driver. See, this house in a cliff was not in the center of the city. I couldn't find anything I liked in the center of the city, so I had to buy a car. But I don't know how to drive. I told you, I don't drive. So I had to hire someone to drive the car. I didn't know anybody. So this guy, out of the kindness of his own heart, decided to tell me to hire his former car driver. This was a fat man by the name of Gabriel. Gabriel had been working with this guy for years, it seemed. They had a very close relationship, or so Gabriel told me. And he was a bodyguard and a car driver all wrapped in one. Anyway, he would talk and tell me a bunch of stuff about his life and his life as the owner's driver. Now I have set up like the entire thing. So this guy got me to hire 4 people to walk around my house. The gardener, architect Filio, the car driver, and the koi fish biologist. They're all walking around my house. Eventually, I realized that the gardener guy, while I am paying for his bills every month, he's actually sending pictures of my house to the owner and asking the owner what to do with the garden, what he should plant now, instead of asking me. But not only that, he's sending pictures of my rooms, of everything in the house, to the owner of the house. So, all right, so now that everything is set up, let me tell you how he tried to scam me the first time around. So I had the car driver, and then I realized that if anything happened in the middle of the night, someone got sick, whatever, we were quite far from a hospital, and I didn't know how to drive. So I had to hire another car driver for the night shift, which I did. So now I had 2 car drivers / security guards in my house. They would hang out in the garage. The garage was open. It didn't have a door, so it was like it would face the driveway of the community, of the gated community. And they would just walk around. They would dress very nice. They wore a suit. But eventually, I received some text messages from the landlord. Here's the story. He tells me that the manager of the gated community got in contact with him to tell him that it was against the community guidelines to have members of my staff visible from the other houses. And I had 2 security guards walking around the premises, and they should remain somewhere where the neighbors wouldn't see them. So he was asking me to please keep them inside the house at all times. Now, this defeated the purpose because they had to do stuff with the car, like clean it, give it maintenance, but also they were hired also as security guards, and I wanted to keep an eye on the house. So I told the landlord, like, listen, if I put them in the house, then they won't be able to clean the car, work on the car, or keep an eye on the property, and I don't really think it's that big of a deal. And he said, well, if you want to keep them in the garage, you're gonna have to build a security booth for them. Now I'm gonna give you the quote for the security booth. So check this. He wanted me to pay for the construction of a security booth in his garage. The security booth costed, according to him, $20,000. He sent me a budget signed by Filio the architect. He wanted me to pay him $20,000 to get his architect Filio to build a security booth that was probably not even gonna cost him like $1,000. He was probably gonna hire cheap Mexican handyman to make the booth, and it was probably gonna cost him like $5,000, and he was just gonna keep $15,000 to himself. Also, why is he asking me to pay for a security booth in his house? So, you know, I kept like trying to wiggle out of this, and eventually I thought, you know what, I'm gonna talk myself to the community manager. So I sent one of the drivers up to find me the number, and he got me the number, and I gave him a phone call. Do you know what he told me? He had never gotten into contact with the landlord about anything at all whatsoever. There are no guidelines in the community for anything like this. This did not happen. So basically what we have here is a landlord that made up an entire story about breaking community guidelines so that I would pay him $20,000 to build a security booth that wasn't needed or even requested by the community. Now, this was even before I learned that the community had been built by his grandfather, and it was actually 15 houses owned by his 15 cousins. Now that I know that, it's even more ridiculous. That was the first time that he tried to scam me. I told him basically to shove it. Very soon, he would find another way to get the same amount of money that he needed or wanted from another source, but through me. But before I tell you that, let me update you into what was going on with the car driver. Oh my God, this story is it's crazy. All right. So at this point in time, let's recap, okay? We have a probably owner of a house desperate for money, trying to scam me. And I have 4 spies of his walking around my house. Now the driver. Okay, the driver is the former driver of the owner. They have a pretty tight relationship, to the point where the driver, who wouldn't shut up about it, told me that the owner had paid him after a few years working for him. He had given him an all-inclusive paid vacation to Acapulco, where his family had owned a resort. This guy also wanted to scam me. They operated in a very similar fashion. The first time that he tried to scam me, he told me he had been stopped by the police and they had given him a fine, and he had to pay it out of pocket. He couldn't give me any paperwork, but he had to pay the equivalent to $40. My car needed a document and he didn't have it because the car was new. I didn't know if this was true or not. He didn't give me any proof, but at the same time, I kind of felt bad for him if it was true. Like, he was paying $40 for me, so I gave it to him. Whenever we went to Costco, and I go to Costco a lot, he would try and slide things into my cart without me noticing. And then when I went to pay, whenever I reached the register, he would always step out to smoke a cigarette, to look at something. He would be nonchalantly walking away from the register when it came the time to pay for his stuff. Now, I never paid for any of his stuff. He tried to slide in anything you could think of, like from a vest with a bunch of pockets that he, I suppose, wanted to use as an official car driver, to a full-on tasting menu of Nescafe capsules that I suppose he pretended to sell to someone after. He was an artist, is what I'm trying to say. He was an artist. Then he would come up with supposed malfunctions on the car. I had 2 cars by then, one for the staff, one for me. He would say, oh, there was a light flashing on the on the board of the car saying that the engine needs maintenance. I'm going to take it to the shop and then you have to pay for it. And at the beginning, I believed him, so I would pay for it. But it was every week, it was something else. And I suddenly realized that I was giving this fat dude a bunch, like hundreds of euros every week to pay for different stuff, ranging from like the engine of the car to like the mirror to like cleaning supplies to all kinds of stuff. And then I said, you know what, something's going on here. This is not normal. Like, why is this guy asking me for money every single week? This makes no sense. The last one that happened before I learned what was up and decided to get rid of him, was that he kept complaining for a week that the wheels on the car were wobbly. Like, he would drive and he had no stability. Now keep in mind that this mansion was in a cliff, so going down to the cliff, the streets were very narrow. It's very dangerous to drive in, and he kept complaining that the wheels had a problem, that he had to replace the 4 wheels of the car because it was wobbly, and and making me nervous about it. I thought it was just another one of his schemes, that he just wanted to get money from me. And I was absolutely right, but because I thought this, I didn't pay attention and I didn't want to replace them. Now, before anything else happened, the guy disappeared. One morning, he simply just didn't come. And the next day, he also didn't show up. And the next day, he was also missing. And then on the 4th day, I received some text messages with the most disgusting pictures I have ever gotten from him, telling me that he had kidney stones. He had to go on an emergency to the hospital to get the kidney stones removed because he was in so much pain. And he sent me a picture of the stones that he got removed. I was about to puke when I received these pictures, but that's when it clicked for me, because you see, this guy wasn't only like boastful and like manic and all of that. He wasn't only trying to scam me with a different thing every week. This guy also had a very strange looking skin. He was profusely sweating all the time. His skin was kind of pale and waxy looking. And now that he told me that he had stones, I started, I went online to research what could it be, and suddenly everything clicked. This guy had a drug problem. This guy was probably hooked on heroin. All the signs were there. He acted exactly the same way a junkie would, like a high-functioning junkie would. And he had all the signs. Every single sign that was listed, he had it, including down to the kidney stones. And that's when it hit me. And that's when I realized, you know what? This is why this guy has such a close relationship with the landlord of the place, because he was probably not only his car driver, he was probably the guy who handled the drugs. He was probably the guy who went to get the drugs for him. And he probably does have a drug problem. They act in the exact same way, trying to scam you with different things all the time. And to this day, I don't know if that's true, but I have a really, if I had to bet, I would put money on this, that this is exactly what was going on. So that's why he gave him a full package, all expenses, paid for a trip to Acapulco. He wasn't just a driver. He was his driver / drug provider. And so I fired him. And the other driver was driving for me when I fired this guy. And he told me, checking the wheels of the car, he found nails. This dude was crazy enough, was so completely out of his mind with his drug problem and needing a fix, that he went so far as to put my life in danger by hammering the nails to the 4 wheels of the car. Now, you would think maybe he just had really bad luck and went on a street that had a bunch of nails on the floor and they all got stuck precisely But no, because some of the nails were hammered on the side of the wheels. So this was someone with a hammer and a nail hammering nails to the wheels of the car. And so imagine how crazy you have to be to put someone's life in danger like this. It was the recipe for a murder. Like he would be driving down one of these super dangerous cliffs with nails hammered on the wheels of the car, and he could lose control of the car. He could lose control of the car and we could just fall down the cliff, and that would be the end of me. Very disturbing stuff. Like I tell you this and I am like laughing about it, but when I get to this part of the story, I kind of feel very, I don't feel very good. I take a pause, because this was, when I found out about this, I couldn't believe like just how, I don't know, I don't even have words to describe this. And this is the guy that was recommended to me by the insane landlord of this house, the psycho owner of this house. Okay, so we're approaching the climax of the story. If you thought the wheels were the climax of the story, you were wrong. Again, you were wrong. There's still more. So now we have a very clear picture of who this person is. This person is probably involved in some sort of ritual stuff, but then I am pretty sure that the guy also has a drug problem, because only a person who has a substance problem would act the way this dude was acting. So I didn't do the security booth, but he still needed the money. So what happened next? All right, so we were at this point where I had told Filio, the architect, to shove it. I didn't want him in my home anymore. And he did the stupid plastic tube reparations in the entirety of the house. By the way, I had been 6 months in this house and he still hadn't painted the house. So here I am in a house that's half of it is broken. We have the sinks that keep clogging. We have the problem. We had a problem with blinking lights as well. It was the lights to the entire house. It was maddening and it was so easy to fix, and he never sent anybody to fix it. So we had that problem. One day I was taking a shower in my white marble Taj Mahal bathroom, and water starts coming out of the shower head like crazy. This was one of those rain shower heads. Another terrible idea. So these rain, just so you know, these rain shower heads, water falls down the sky like it was raining, right? They look so smooth. Well, no, the tiny needles of water that come through that, if you have hard water, they solidify on each one of these tiny little things that the water comes out of, and they clog. So now you have a shower head with a rain effect that really just shoots water in every direction and randomly, and some of them don't work and the other ones do. The ones that do work are having to drain the shower head from the load that will go to 30 different little holes. They would have to go down 3 holes, so they're like shooting water. It's like a mess, and it's happened to me a bunch of times. Like, it always happens with these stupid shower heads. So anyway, the rain shower head, that was clogged, obviously, but that wasn't the problem. The problem is it got clogged so bad, eventually the water just started coming out of like the other side. So like, this is the pipe, and like here's the shower head, and it's clogged here, so the water kind of backtracks, and then it starts coming out of here like a like a fountain. And so I couldn't shower like that. So I called the guy once more and I told him, listen, this is also now broken, and the lights keep blinking, and you didn't paint the house, and the sinks are clogged again, and could you please send me somebody to help me? Of course he said no. Of course he refused. So at this point I was already fuming. So I called the realtor from Sotheby's. I was trying to capitalize on Sotheby's reputation and told her off and told everything that happened, like how he didn't clean the house, he didn't paint the walls, he didn't fix anything that had gone wrong in the house for 6 months, and now my shower is broken and I couldn't take a shower in my bathroom, and could he please send somebody to fix this? It was a really easy fix too. Like, you could either like clean the shower head so that the water can come out the way it's supposed to, seal it back to the pipe, or you could just simply replace the shower head. That was the whole deal. The problem was the shower head. It was very easy to see. You didn't need anything, but it was so high up the ceiling was so high and the thing was so high that you needed like a special ladder to get up there. I didn't want to get on the ladder. So I wanted somebody to take care of this. After I talked to the realtor, I guess she got into contact with somebody in his family or something, because the next phone call I received was a very sorrowful and like apologetic landlord excusing himself, profusely apologizing for everything and telling me that now everything was going to work out. He was going to send me, you know what? He was going to hire, we were not going to see the Mexican architect anymore. He was going to hire his cousin, who was also an architect. And she was a very good architect and very expensive, but things were going to be just right. Everything was going to be fixed to perfection, and she was also gonna paint the entire house. Well, thank you, 6 months late, but thank you. So he sends his cousin, and his cousin comes along. She was entirely dressed in Lululemon training gear. All right, so she went to see what the problem was. I explained it to her. I told her, listen, the shower head, this and that, and hard water, and now you have to, like, basically, it's enough if you clean it and then seal it back up, but if you can, then you can always buy a new shower head. And if you do, I don't need a rain shower head. Like, please get me something normal. I don't need the shower effect. I don't even like the shower effect, the rainfall effect. Get me any shower head will do. I just want to take a shower. And I thought this was gonna be like a 48 hours max, because she had to run to the hardware store to get a new shower head. But no. She came the next day and she brought a bunch of constructors and like workers, smelly, sweaty people walking around, like 20 people walking around my house, like covering things in plastic. They were gonna paint the whole house. And so I went out, and when I came back home, I was expecting to find the shower head replaced. Instead, I found she had jackhammered and broke the entire floor and walls of the white marble bathroom. The shower head was intact. She didn't change it. She had destroyed the entire marble work of the bathroom for no fucking reason. I didn't understand what was going on, so I talked to her, and she said somehow she had figured out that it was a pipes problem. No, it wasn't a pipes problem, but I didn't want to... I didn't really understand the scope of the situation that I was in. So at the moment, I didn't reply anything. I just shut up and let her do her thing. So she did, and she left. And that night, we were having dinner. And after dinner, I get some text messages on my phone from the maid telling me that it was raining in the kitchen. It was raining in the kitchen. I didn't understand what she meant by it's raining in the kitchen. So I went downstairs to the kitchen, and effectively, it was raining in the kitchen. You see, for some reason, somehow, there was water pouring out of the light sockets in the kitchen, like it was, a rainfall over all of my appliances, over the dining booth, everywhere. The kitchen was now a rainforest. Thank God I didn't leave my computer on that table, because it would have been ruined. Half of my appliances did get ruined by this rainfall. So I call the owner again, and he sends me his cousin again as an emergency, and they have to open the entire ceiling to the kitchen. Apparently, somebody botched something, surprise, in the bathroom, fudged the pipeline at some point, and now it was raining in my kitchen. And now they had to open the entire ceiling to the kitchen to fix the pipes, and then redo the ceiling in the kitchen. All in all, it was gonna take about 2 months to fix the bathroom and the kitchen. And in the meantime, I would have to continue to pay an exorbitant amount of money every month to have a house without a kitchen and without a bathroom, with 20 people walking around my house trying to fix something that wasn't even broken to begin with. Trying to make sense of all of this insanity, the only conclusion I could reach was this. Here's what happened. When the realtor called the landlord's family, somebody told him, get that fixed. You can't have a tenant living like this. Fix it. And he needed money. He was desperate. So he came up with a bright idea. What if I get an accomplice, my cousin, and together we scam our own family through these unsuspecting tenants? We are going to tell them that the work that needs to be done in this house is so massive that it requires a gigantic budget. So instead of being a showerhead that needs replacement, this is going to be something that we need to jackhammer the entire marble floor of the bathroom for, and then we're going to have to fix the pipes, and then we're going to have to get the marble people make an entirely new panel of marble so that we can replace the floor of the house and the floor of the bathroom and the walls and everything, because what they wanted was the family to give them a budget of money they could grab from. And the rest is history. That is exactly what he did. And I know that this is exactly what he did because after being for 6 months in that house and having nobody come to work on his brother's construction site, all of a sudden, I had the sound of construction waking me in the morning because his brother's construction had been reactivated. All of a sudden, his brother also got funds to continue to build his mega mansion. And what happened is that these families with trust fund kids, if one of them gets a budget for something, the other one will come along and say, hey, what about me? I haven't even finished constructing my house and you're gonna give him a budget to fix his pipes? No way. I want to have a budget too. And so now the family finds themselves in a position where they have to give a budget, equal budget, to both siblings. So now the landlord in my house finally got money, funds to continue to drug himself or whatever it is he was doing with it. And his brother got funds to continue the construction in his own mega mansion to, I suppose in the future, rent it out to some unsuspecting, naive, rich nouveau. So anyway, so you see the type of people that rents a mega mansion like this? Do you see the twists and turns of fate? Do you see why this is a terrible, horrible idea? Now imagine paying the amount of money I was paying every month to have a broken kitchen, a bathroom that's completely destroyed, a crazy drug addict, Illuminati member, trying to scrape money out of your pockets, someone doing attempts on your life in order to get just some change, because that's what four wheels of a car, like how expensive are they? I don't know. Are they worth a human life? I don't think so. Etc., etc. ad infinitum. So that's the point when I decided, you know what, I'm out of here. I am not going to continue to waste energy, money, and everything in this context. This is just insane. I want nothing to do with you people. I had fired the gardener, I had fired the biologist, the Filio, the architect, the driver. The owner had like nobody inside my house. Sunday, when I had no employees in the house and there was no security guards from the community walking around, late at night, I would load all of my bags into my car, get my family in, and leave. And I would do so under the guise of like the night, right? The mantle of darkness that is the night. And I wouldn't tell the owner anything. He would just realize one morning that I just wasn't there, wasn't answering, wasn't paying him. That's it. So that's what I did. I got in the car, I left. Woohoo, I'm out of this. Finally, this is over. This nightmare is done. I have nothing to do with these people anymore. 2 days later, I get a message from the landlord asking me if I am done with the house or if I am coming back from my vacation. How did he know I had loaded luggage into my car, if there was nobody from his staff in my house, if the community guards weren't there at the time, if there was no way he could possibly know that I had left the house? This kept me scratching my head for a long while until it finally clicked. The entire house had a close surveillance camera system. It was pointed at all the common areas, so like the terraces, the garage, all of that. And also some of them were pointed to the terraces, but you could actually even grab a little bit of the rooms that were attached to the terraces because of the angle of the camera. There was a room that used to be the surveillance room with a bunch of computers that were connected to these cameras where you could just see everything that was happening around the house. That system had a password, and we never changed the password. And that's when it hit me that he probably had internet access to the security cameras of the house, and he had probably been seeing everything that had been going on in my house from the day that we moved in. So this drug addict satanic psycho was actually paying attention to the cameras, because how else did he see 2 days after the fact to write me that I had loaded my luggage into my car in the middle of the night 2 nights before? Insane. So I was paying to live in a broken mega mansion owned by an insane psycho, being surveilled the entire time. I don't even know if he has like footage of me like walking around my house, I don't know, doing my everyday stuff, or maybe taking a shower, right? I don't even know. I don't even know where these cameras were pointed. I don't even know if he could like change the direction of the camera with like on command. I know nothing. So anyway, so that's how this whole thing ended. So I told him, you know what? Yes, I left. I'm not coming back. And he never gave me back the deposit either. I didn't ask because I obviously broke the lease, even though it was warranted. And I simply didn't want to deal with it anymore. But guess what? And here's the kicker. The realtor knew everything that happened, right? Well, guess which mega mansion was listed back on Sotheby's website 24 hours after the last conversation I had with the landlord? You are damn right. There was not enough time to clean the house. There was not enough time to repair the bathroom. There was not enough time for anything. And yet Sotheby's was there to back this up, to tell you to trust, to be confident. This was going to be a great experience. This was going to be a great experience for the next unsuspecting tenant. Yeah, so this is why luxury realty sites are a joke. Why? Because they earn commission and all of this. They have a vexed interest in their reputation, sure, but their vexed interest really is in getting that juicy commission. They're not going to lose on that just because the owner is a little cookie. Just because the owner had an employee who had an attempted murdering the previous tenant. Peanuts. Who cares? Look at this mansion. Look at the beautiful door. Look at the koi fish pond. It's marvelous. It's beautiful. It does things you would never even imagine. Yeah. So never again after this experience would I go through a luxury realty agency again, because I just don't trust them. And this leads us to the last experience. Finally, the final third dream home is now up. But let me take a sip out of this, because this has been a wild ride so far. Okay, let's do an exercise where you put yourselves in my situation. Imagine that you just came out of a second scammy, swindly dream house lease. You have spent a small fortune on this endeavor and you have nothing to show for it. You were scammed and swindled twice in a row. Everything went up in a gigantic cloud of smoke and flames and then fell all around you, and you're currently sitting in a big pile of ashes, licking your wounds and wondering, what happened? How did this happen to me? Not once, but twice. What did I do wrong? And reflecting and thinking about it, you come to several conclusions. Now, the first conclusion is you were wrong the first time. It wasn't the sketchy realtor. It doesn't matter where the house comes from. It can come from a sketchy realtor without an office or the most reputable realty agency you can find. They all suck and nobody's gonna vouch for anybody. All houses are in ruins and you just have to trust your own self. You have to trust your own judgment. You have to be very careful and you have to think everything through very well. That's the first one. Now, the second lesson was, when you move into one of these houses, what you expect is to have comfort, luxury, and to have smooth sailing. Remember, you want someone else to take care of the problems. You don't want to have to do it yourself. If you knew that when you rent one of these houses, you had to suddenly become an expert on how to take care of koi fish, how to do gardening, how to keep a pool working, and how to keep, how to fix a home cinema theater, and etc., you wouldn't rent them to begin with. So it is usually stated on the lease that the owner is responsible for managing all of these things. So anything in the house that is extra, like the garden, like a home theater, like a pool, like a pond, all of that should be managed and taken care by the owner. And if it's written on the lease, then that's the case. And the problem here is that these owners, as you can see, are unreliable. They're unreliable people. You have people with a lot of problems. You have a guy who had a drug problem who simply did not have the time or the energy to devote to this house that he wasn't even living in. So for all he cared, everything could just rot, dissolve, get destroyed. He didn't care. He was just getting the money every month. And in the case of the first house, the same thing happened. To give you two examples that I didn't talk about in the first portion of the video, because the story was going to be eternal. In the first house, for example, the owner was supposed to take care of the garden. Never did she send me a gardener. I asked her many times. She never sent anyone. In fact, there was a snowstorm when I was in the house, and a whole tree fell on the front lawn. It blocked the entrance to the house. Like I couldn't go in or out of the house through the main gate because there was a huge tree that just fell on the front lawn. I called her several times. Did she do anything about it? No, she didn't do a single thing. For all she cared, that tree could still be there today. So it was me, the person who had to handle that in order to continue to live in this house. That's just one of the examples. So even if it's written down on the lease, if they don't want to fix things, they won't. And you're the one who's going to have to take care of all of that. So having all of this knowledge, I decided that, I was no longer a naive child. I went into this project as a child, naive yet optimistic, bubbly, candorous, and I came through the other end, swindled, scammed, yes, but full of knowledge. I was better for it because after having gone through all of this, I was weathered. I had thicker skin. I had a keen eye, and I knew I was a fox ready to find the perfect opportunity and to weed out all of the scammy monsters that were ahead of me. And this was my mindset when I decided to rent a third dream house. This time around, I thought, you know what? I'm going to solve everything with a single shot. This is what I'm going to do now. I am going to rent a huge, luxurious penthouse in a luxury high-rise building. See, this is the train of thought. I thought by doing this, I was fixing many problems at once. First of all high-rise luxury buildings are new, so there's not a really big problem of negligence. Second of all, if there's any common areas such as pools or gardens, the building takes care of that, so I don't have to fight with the landlord. The building will take care of it and I can just do my thing. Everything will be in pristine condition anyway, because it's part of the building responsibilities. And the third thing was, because it was in the center of the city, I wouldn't need a car. I wouldn't need a driver that's gonna attempt on my life. I could just walk anywhere. I mean, I still had the car and I don't know how to drive, so I still would need a driver, but I just didn't need a driver. I didn't have to jump in the car for anything. I could just walk anywhere I wanted. So I didn't also need security staff because the building had security guards. So all in all, it seemed like a great idea to me at the time. That's what was on my mind when I set out to find the third and final dream house. And we're gonna call this Dream House, Dream Home, Numero 3. The dumb high-rise penthouse. Now, I found a beautiful high-rise. It was a super tall, skinny, black tower, very sexy, very heavily marketed. It was in the best area of the city and close to everything I liked. So it was perfect. The penthouse of that tower was for rent and it was 500 square meters. So that's, I think 5,000 square feet, maybe. And it had 3 bedrooms. The elevators opened straight into my living room. Everything had beautiful finishes. They explained to me the concept of the building. They had, because this was the center of the city, the best area, and it was very crammed, they finally got this lot. It wasn't a very big lot, but they managed to get the best engineers around the world to create this concept of a very skinny tower with all the amenities and everything that anyone would ever wish. And each apartment spanned the entirety of the floor it was in. So this contributed to the luxury feel of the building because less tenants or less people living in it, plus no door-to-door neighbors to deal with. Fantastic. Each property also had exposure from many different directions, so this was cool. And I was sold out on this, so I wanted to rent it. We called the owner. Now, this owner was also a very busy man, and he couldn't come to meet us or to sign the lease. So he appointed a property manager by the name of Vanessa, who was basically, I don't even want to be mean, but she was so insufferable. She was a bimbo with an obsession with high-end luxury brands. Like, she would be dressed from head to toe on like the things that she could find with the biggest logos. And she was just a headache to deal with. But anyway, at first I didn't want to sign a lease without meeting the owner. I was very scared that this was another scam. The owner wanted me to sign digitally. He wanted to sign digitally. We all signed digitally, a digital contract. And to me, this all sounded very sketchy. Now, this was still during the COVID era, so this man was an old man, and he seemed to be terrified of COVID, and the reason he didn't want to come was because he didn't want to get sick with it. I think at some point he even claimed to have COVID, so he wouldn't have to come sign. I don't know. Fact is, it was very difficult. In the end, we managed to get the guy to show up via Zoom. So he showed up via Zoom meeting, and during the call, he told us that he was wary of renting this out again because the past tenant had left in the middle of the lease agreement. And this should have been a red flag. Like, why would the tenant leave in the middle of the contract if there wasn't something very wrong with his apartment? But, you know, I was a soldier. I felt invincible. I thought I knew everything, and still I didn't see this for what it was. A huge red flag. So anyway, we read the whole contract. It had 56 pages. Vanessa read it aloud for what seemed to be 2 hours. And by the end of it, we ended up signing the lease. Now, this apartment had a few particular things that were a feature, but in reality were bugs. See, first of all, this tower had these elevators that would go all the way up to everybody's apartment. So these elevators will open inside each person's apartment. So naturally, you couldn't go up unless you had a key for the person's apartment, right? It's kind of complicated to explain. If you didn't have the key to the apartment, you couldn't go up. But instead of having keys, this tower had a much more revolutionary system. You see, everything worked with fingerprints. The entire system of the entire building was set up on a smart, robotic, futuristic thing that read your fingerprints for absolutely everything. So, the first day, instead of giving us the key, they took us to an office in the back of the building where the building manager took our fingerprints in order to put us in the system. And here's the thing. First of all, it took us hours because it didn't work very well. But also, we could see on the list under each apartment the names of the people with access. And in the case of my apartment, the fingerprints of the owner, his ex-wife, and 5 different people who I assume were his adult children because they had the same last name, they were all in the system with their fingerprints tied to the apartment I had just rented. So I told the security guy that I didn't feel very good having all of these people with keys to my house, if it was possible to remove them from the system. And he said no, basically. So I talked to the landlord and he also said no. So now I had to go to bed every night thinking that the property owner plus his ex-wife plus his 5 adult children could at any time show up in my living room unannounced. Not only that, but I realized that, in fact, any person working in that building could come up unannounced because the room where the system was in was basically next to the staff room where all the security guards and like cleaning people and everything hung out in the building. And it was just a matter of getting their fingerprints in the system. They also had key cards. The security people had key cards they could use to access any floor in the building. So technically, was this safe really? Was this secure? It didn't feel safe. It didn't feel secure, but I didn't know this before signing the lease. Now I had to live in a house where potentially anyone could come in. So that was the first thing. Now the second thing is, even inside the apartment, everything was smart. Smart TV, sure, but smart panels everywhere. Everything had shittier, older versions of an iPad stuck to the walls, and these iPads would control everything: the lights, the water, there was a sound system throughout the entire apartment, and you could control this from the smart panels. There was a safety box where you could put like jewelry or your passports in, and it would also open with your fingerprint. Yes, it was a very, very smart apartment, except for the fact that the entire system was broken from day one. What does this mean, the entire system was broken? We couldn't control absolutely anything in the house. I was locked out of the system and nobody knew the password, and it was impossible to get in, so I couldn't turn off the lights in my house. There were no switches. There were no buttons. There was nothing manual in the entire apartment. So The lights were permanently on. We couldn't turn them off. The music, forget about it. It was impossible to turn it off or do anything whatsoever with the speakers. I was sold on an apartment that I could have like a music in the background in my entire house. No, I couldn't, because it was all managed from the smart panel that was so smart that it didn't work at all. Warm water in the bathroom so that I could take a shower with hot water instead of cold was also controlled through the panel. The temperature of the house was controlled through the panel, so I had no AC in the summer and no heat in the winter. And yeah, so I called the owner to explain to him this weird conundrum we had in front of us. And he said he was going to send somebody to take a look at it and fix it. The problem was that this panel, this company that installed these panels, was an Australian firm, and they had offices in Australia, and they couldn't come all the way just to fix a situation in one apartment. The person who had the password for this was long gone, and nobody remembered what the password was. So technically, he tried to send me someone to take a look at it, an engineer, but he couldn't do anything because he was locked out of the system. So the next thing they tried was to send, I'm not kidding, they sent a hacker. They hired a hacker. How do you even find a hacker? I don't know. They found a hacker, and the hacker came and tried to hack into the smart system of this luxurious penthouse, and he couldn't hack into it. He spent 2 days or 3 days trying to hack into it, and he couldn't. So now I have rented a house where all the lights are permanently turned on. I have to freeze to death every time I want to take a shower. None of the lights I can switch off, so I have to sleep with a lamp hitting my face. And to boot, they also had all of the traditional issues that we have seen so far in houses like this, with infinity marble sinks that kept clogging and I couldn't do anything about. They didn't have blinds in most of the rooms of the house, including my bedroom, so I couldn't. The panoramic windows let all the light in. It would hit my face every morning, and I couldn't do anything about it. And none of this got fixed either. Oh, and the courtesy bathroom in the living room that had a toilet and a sink. Well, the sink was an infinity marble sink, and it was clogged, of course, but the toilet, actually the entire bathroom was made out of marble, and they had put the cistern of the toilet inside the wall behind the marble panel. So it was impossible to fix the cistern, and the toilet was broken, and they had to destroy the wall basically to get to the cistern. Good times. So this was the situation we were in. Also, we realized that while the first time that we took a tour of the house, we thought that the windows surely had a treatment, right? That would prevent people from the outside seeing in. Because there were adjacent towers and people on the same level as us, we thought, surely they can see inside the apartment because there's no blinds, there's no curtains, right? Wrong, because when we had been living in this house for about a week, we decided to look up into like the first and second floor apartments from the street, and you could see absolutely everything that happened in there. So the person who built this black tower didn't really think that maybe you didn't want to have the entire city see you walking from your shower to the bedroom like naked, right? So that's when we requested the landlord put some sort of curtain or blinds, at least in the master bedroom and the other bedroom, you know, because we kind of wanted a little bit of privacy. And here's what happened. The owner of this place sent us, I don't know where he got them, but it was the most inexperienced crew of people who fix things, handymen, that he could possibly find with the cheapest materials he could possibly get to make the worst botch of a job I have ever seen. So now, this is a luxury apartment. The panoramic window has a certain width, right? You expect someone who's going to put a blind on that to take that into account and put a motor that it's strong enough to lift the entirety of the blind thing that you're putting on. Plus, you want it to span the whole width of the window. Otherwise, you're going to have like snippets of blind going up and down. Well, I don't even know how to explain it. It's better if you see a video of what happened. Basically, they took sections. They didn't even put a rail to like tuck the blinds in. They were just like loose. All the light would still go in between the sections. And the motor was so weak, it couldn't really raise the blinds properly. It would just go like, and it would stay in place. Just a terrible botched job. So we went back and forth with not the landlord, but Vanessa, who was the person that we could talk to about all of these things. And she wanted to get, a salary every month for doing absolutely nothing. She tried to get away from every single situation by telling us, for example, with the toilet thing, why didn't you try flushing all of the toilets before renting this apartment? Like, seriously? Really? Is that the expectations now, that I have to make sure that every single thing in this house is working before renting a house that costs 10 times 20 times your salary? Like, get real. Now, one more thing. In this house, there was a shower that was made entirely out of marble, and it had like a little marble bench. I'm pretty sure you have seen this in some of the luxurious home tours. They have like the shower, there's the shower head, there's where you put there's like a hole where you put like your shampoo, whatever. And on the bottom, there's like a little bench made out of the same marble material. Well, let me tell you one thing about that. They break very easily. Like, you don't want to sit in one of those benches. I had a couple people sit in one of these benches, not me, and it broke. It broke in half. Thank God I was just showing the house around, and they were wearing jeans, because otherwise they would have cut their legs with the pieces of marble. So when you see this in one of those tours, this is one of those fails that is just a disaster, a lawsuit waiting to happen. Now, this was already hellish enough, right? Wouldn't you say? I didn't really give this owner a single month in advance, but he wanted 6 months in advance. Like, I didn't give him a security deposit that he could keep and return at the end, but I had to pay him 6 months in advance. So I paid for 6 months and then lived those 6 months in the house. I thought that was safe. I didn't think it was going to be a problem. But you see, now I wanted to leave this place as soon as possible because nothing worked. And I was trapped, because if I left, I was going to lose all the months that I paid in advance. Now, what else happened here in this tower? Why was it also like a terrible idea all around, even if you rented a different unit where the owner hadn't lost the password to the smart system? Okay, here's the deal. This lot was very small. They hired engineers to make it work. They gave each person an entire floor of the tower. I think the whole lot was something like 600 square meters, and each apartment was like 450 square meters, something like that. But the fact is that they needed to have a parking lot, right? They needed parking space. So what was the solution for this problem? Well, they decided to dig down as much as possible. So this huge tall tower had pretty much as many number of floors, subterranean floors below, dedicated exclusively to parking space. And how would you get the cars in and out of such a space if you don't have a lot of space, if the lot is very small? Very easy. You use a car elevator. When we got the tour of the building, they showed us this as like a point of pride. We have 2 car elevators. Cars go in the elevator goes down, and then you park your car wherever you want. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Yeah, except for the fact that every morning you had maybe 20 or 40 people who lived in this huge tower wanting to leave at the same time so that they got on time to whatever job they have. And there's just one elevator going up and one elevator going down. And even if there were many elevators, there's just a single ramp going out of the parking space into the street. So if you wanted to leave this building in the morning, or if you want to arrive in the afternoon at peak hour, you would have to start the engine of your car maybe 2 to 3 hours before the time you plan on actually exiting the building. It was terrible, horrible. Thank God that I love walking and it was in the center of the city because I didn't get to use the car much at all. Actually, I told the car driver to please park on the street so that we saved all of that time. And that wasn't very smart. It was kind of dangerous, actually. Now, the worst thing by far that happened to me here before I decided to leave was so I lost all of my family heirlooms. I had family heirlooms that had been in my family for generations, and my grandma gave to me when I was 15. I treasured this like you have no idea. This was like one of the most treasured possessions I ever had. And I would have put them in the safety box. Thank God I didn't, because the security system was broken and we managed to open it the first time. But then once we closed it, we could never again open it. So thank God I didn't put it in there. Instead, I put it in the closet. I had a bunch of drawers for accessories, and there was a spot lined with, there was a drawer lined with velvet that was perfect for, higher end luxury items such as fine jewelry. And that's where I put all of these things. But because I didn't put them in a safety box, all of that stuff was gone. One day I went into the bathroom and I went to see my things, and I opened the drawer, and to my dismay, it was all gone. The only thing that I managed to salvage, like that didn't disappear, were my earrings, because I don't take them off ever. They're very special to me. But other than that, everything was gone. To this day, I have no idea who took them. I don't know if it was one of the maids. I don't know if it was a security guard in the building because they had access to my house. I have absolutely no clue. All I know is that it was all gone. If I could have put it in the safety box, nothing would have happened. But because we were locked out of the system, I'm pretty sure it's some pawn shop somewhere. They sold it to somebody at a terrible price, something that was invaluable to me. So that was the saddest, the saddest note, the saddest thing that happened in this building. Now, when this happened, and by the end of it, we exhaustion levels maxed out. We decided to just leave and, leave, even though we still had a month or so ahead of us. We were tired of just like living in such conditions, and we decided to just leave. All in all, I have to say, oh, and by the way, once we left, Vanessa, the property manager, even though she knew everything that had happened, she tried to guilt trip me on a text message telling me that I should let her get into the house so she could show it to new tenants, even though I had paid for the months in advance, and it was still technically my time to be in the building. But because they had the fingerprints in the system and I had left the country, they went in anyway before it was up. So yeah, this was the entirety of my experience. I can't believe I told all of this in a single video. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to add that can make this video like um to give you like final words like Batman, like final morals to the story. The thing I guess that would sum all of it up is never, ever, ever rent a luxury home. Like, don't. Don't. If you're thinking about it, don't. Did you win the lottery? Fine, fantastic. Keep it in your account. Did you finally made millions at your career? That's great. I hope that you're very proud of yourself. I don't know. Buy an island. Don't get a house. Believe me, it's just the worst idea. A luxury home is like one of the worst decisions you could possibly make. It's not going to make your life easier. On the contrary, it's going to make it a living hell. And so, what I learned from all of these experiences is there is a sweet spot. There is a sweet spot. So, if you rent a very cheap house, you're going to be dealing with a landlord that is desperate for money, who is probably a bad character. And because, you know, cheap housing is usually the landlord to cheap housing is usually very, you know, the character, right? And but if you go to the other extreme, it's like a horseshoe effect. And if you go to the hyper luxurious homes, you are going to get screwed just the same. So you want to rent something that is on the sweet spot, right in the middle. You want to touch the ceiling of luxury that you can expect in an average property. So you want something that is luxurious within reason, that somebody could be renting this place for profit, and yet they are in a good enough financial position that they're not desperate for money and they're not trying to scam you in every possible way. By the way, the third house, the owner of this house was also an ex-politician. He was also involved with a international organization in Switzerland. And my take on this is they are probably receiving this real estate as some sort of payment for favors received. I mean, I don't have the proof for it, but that's the feeling that I get, right? Because their salaries cannot possibly match the level of luxury these houses have. And now that they're out of office and they have no income, this is all they have left. So they are trying to use this to milk as much money as possible from unsuspecting people. And in fact, it's even better if the house is a mess, because then people just pay for things in advance and leave, and you get to keep all of that and then rent it to someone else. If the house is working, then you risk the tenant wanting to stay and not letting you keep all of that juicy security deposit money or advance payments. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this crazy ride. It was a long video, so if you're still watching, thank you so much for lending me your eyeballs and your ears for the past, I don't know how many hours this video is going to be. So one thing though, normally this is the point in a video where somebody would be pestering you to like subscribe to my channel and like click on the right? But I don't want, first of all, I don't really want to do that. But second of all, I don't really trust these algorithms much. I figure that, at least in my case, whenever I subscribe to someone, even if I really want to see their videos, I never do. They never tell me when they come up with something new. And I don't want to have to rely on that kind of thing. So instead, what I do is I have a newsletter. It's not really a newsletter, it's like an emails list, I suppose. And what I do is whenever I have a new video, I let people know through email. And that way you can choose whether or not you want to see it without having the algorithm filter things for you without you noticing. So if you want to know next time I upload a video, please go here and enter your email in the box there. You're going to have to confirm it because I want only people who really want to get it to receive it. And once that's done, then you'll be in the list and you'll know next time I upload something. So anyway, I hope you're smarter than me if you ever if you ever have the chance of renting one of these houses and you just don't. See you next time.